call the roll.
Okay, Director Balin,
Here.
Director Boatright,
Here.
Director Kearns,
Here.
Director Ringen.
Here. She's in the waiting room now.
Yeah, there we go.
Yay.
Interesting. Okay, now I'll go.
Might as well bring her on in to say present.
She should be like-
Well,
She said she's in.
Present.
okay, thank
There
you.
she is. Right on.
Very
Morning.
Good morning, so we're all here.
Good morning.
All right, so with that, would you all please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, good morning, and we have our public with us, and we have some public on Zoom. So at this time, we would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board related to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on an item unless it was noticed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. So we'll start with members of our audience here in the building, and then we'll move to the Zoom audience. Is there anyone that would like to address the board at this time? Okay, seeing none. Cindy, is there anyone?
I do not see anybody.
In Zoom? Okay, great. So then that concludes our public forum, and let's move to the consent calendar. Melissa, will you please read the items?
Okay, item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of May 24th, 2022, and special board meeting of May 26th, 2022. Item number 2, approval of reimbursement claims for director's statement of meetings attended and or travel expenses and claim summary for May 2022. Item number 3, implementation of phases 1 and 2 of the water conservation measures and water shortage contingency plan as directed by executive order N-7-22.
Is there any director that would like to pull one or more of these items?
I'd like to pull number 2 for a quick question and a comment.
Okay, any other board member wish to pull an item? All right, then, go ahead, Ron, before we vote.
Okay, well, as usual, I went through every item in the claim summary and was amazed at the amount of expenditures for projects and things like that. There must be a tremendous amount of activity going on right now. So, but my question is to Mr. Sheffield, our finance director. One of the things that I also noticed in there, and I'm wondering if I'm just dreaming it or what, it looks like this inflation thing is beginning to take hold. I'm seeing the cost for certain things like batteries and other things that just seem like it's through the roof. Are you noticing that now? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So that's it for me.
That's it for you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good. Any member from the public wish to comment on the consent calendar? And Cindy, any?
I don't see anybody.
Thank you. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. That was Director Ringen and Director Kearns. Any further discussion? All those in favor, or Melissa, do you want to do a roll call?
Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. All right, on to regular business. Item number 4, will you please read that item, Melissa?
Okay, suspend all action related to the Proposition 218 notification and cancel the July 19th, 2022 public hearing.
Hey, good morning, President Balin and Director Don Perkins, your General Manager. The reason this item is on the agenda, as you know, on June 2nd, we were unfortunately notified by PG that they had decided to suspend all negotiations in pursuit of this acquisition with PG&E. You know, we just day prior had sent out the postcard for the 218 notice. So as a result, I feel like now is a good time to formally pause all our efforts on pursuing the 218 rate increase and cancel the June 14th special July 19th hearing.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more discussion on this item? I know we don't have a lot of information on it. Okay, Director Ring.
I'd like to make a motion that we,
We haven't heard from the public yet?
oh, sorry about that.
Okay, all right. So in other words, you don't have anything to add to what Don was saying?
No.
Okay, great. All right, so now I'll turn it over to any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item. Come on up.
Good morning, members of the board and staff.
Morning, Tom.
It's been a while since I've been here. And I've made it a point not to come to this board. For me, I have complete confidence in the staff and the council, and you guys all do outstanding work. And I'm very happy that you're pursuing and will continue to pursue this opportunity to get this water out of the South Fork. And so today my comments are based upon my 17 years with the district as general manager and district engineer. And what I want to talk about is not theoretical water or sometimes available water. And the reason I'm here is I'm here because my father would have called what I saw in the paper, somebody's blowing smoke. And it's just an illusion. So first off, I want to make it clear that as from my perspective, having worked here as long as I have, that there are no secret water rights and or newly discovered information that impacts the district's ability to provide water to its customers. The information about the water rights has been public record the entire time that CSERC has been trying to stop the district from developing adequate and secure water supply for its customers. Every general manager before me knew about these secret rights, and every one of them knew that they were not adequate and reliable supply. If you look at those water rights, they have something in common. And that is, they're not available when you need it. When you look at them from late winter and into the spring, there's natural water flowing in these creeks. But however, from an operational point of view, the water is not useful. It has many positive environmental uses, but not from a water consumptive point of view. The snowpack and other runoff during this period supplies more than enough water for the district and its customer needs. There's only one existing storage facility of usable size to capture the water, and build more of them would be an unnecessary expense to our customers. Simply put, the natural water is only available when we don't need it and when we really don't want it. The only water in these creeks and ditches available in the summer and the fall is from the South Fork. And if you just want a simple example, drive up to Standard Road, take a look at the creek, and you're going to see a couple puddles on the downstream side of the creek. You're going to see the puddles a little more. But then if you come down to Tuolumne Road and you look at the same Curtis Creek, which is listed as two of these, it's flowing quite nice. So the question begs, what the hell happens between the two? And all of you know, Phoenix. The Phoenix ditch spills, travels through the mill and spills into that creek. And that's how the algerine and the lower ditches get their water out of that system. The other commonality is it's not a practical to serve residential customers cost effectively out of these sources. The Phoenix ditch can't flow 20 CFS that's listed there. I'd be surprised if it could handle 6. And it has no useful storage rights. The Kincaid ditch can't handle the stated flow. And storage may be good for about 10 residential customers. That's after it's traveled through a mobile home park, and it is close to their on-site sewage disposal system. So water quality would be questionable. The Aldering ditch starts at Old Words Ferry Road, serves no residential customers. The Table Mountain ditch is a raw water customer ditch too far to the west to be any practical use for residential customers. I'm sorry that I'm even here. And I'm sorry that you guys have to put up with being questioned. It's nice to be questioned. The public has the right to do that. But I wish they would be more informed when they question. I want you to please continue on the path of acquiring. And I've got other things to say, I could say, but I just want to thank you. I know you guys are all dedicated. It's a really, from the board, it's kind of a thankless. People only notice you when they get upset about something. Thank you for not pulling the PG&E PSBS and turning off our water. I really like that. And all you staff, every day's uphill. You guys come to work, you all do a good job. Thank you. See you around. Enjoy your lives.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Any member out in the virtual world that would like to comment?
I have a hand up.
Oh, I see. Go ahead, John Buckley.
Yeah, good morning, John Buckley, CSERC. I always respect Tom, and again, I value the fact that he brings a lot of experience and knowledge. 2 points that I would say are corrections. One is to make a statement that CSERC has been trying to stop TUD from getting water to customers. I would suggest is inaccurate and is an opinion that is not verified by the facts that we've actually worked hard, as Eric and others know, to help gain value and grants and other things for TUD to not only have water storage, but to do other things to provide for water. And the other is that CSERC is not the one that claimed that there was a newly discovered information. Dave Schweitzer, retired PG&E, is the person who looked at the purchase agreement, provided the information to our center, provided the information to the media, spoke before your board on the information. And the point that he raised is not that there was secret water rights, is that there are water rights listed and described in the purchase agreement, whether or not they're adequate, whether or not they're for creeks or whatever that aren't sufficient. He was providing that there are water rights, and that TUD representatives have stood publicly to say that TUD has no water rights, and whether they're inadequate, minimal, only during certain seasons or whatever. It's a difference to say there are no water rights or that there are minimal, inadequate water rights. And again, I'm not speaking for Mr. Schweitzer. It's up to him if he feels that you are misinterpreting what he shared. But I simply pointing out that there were some water rights identified in the purchase agreement that I certainly wasn't aware of. I've never heard Tom or Gary Egger or others previously discuss them, and it was new information to me. So thank you. And again, I appreciate hearing Tom and hearing his perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy, is there any other member of the public that wishes to comment?
There's not at this time.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board then, close public comment for discussion and then a motion. Yes, Director Ringy.
I'd like to ask a question before I make a motion. And this is to our general manager. Should we add and sending out notification cards to the ratepayers?
Ask the question again.
Should we add to that that we should send out postcards for notification?
Yes, please.
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion if I could.
Go ahead, please.
I move to formally suspend all action related to the Proposition 218 notifications and cancel the July 19th, 2022 public hearing, as well as have staff notify our ratepayers by postcard notice of what the of what's going on. Thank you.
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, Melissa, please call for the vote.
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and just for the public record, I do believe that Dawn has sent out and contacted personally our partners, the tribes and our electeds, so that Director Ringen, that the notifications are in process, so. And I'm sure we'll have something on the internet as well, correct?
Okay.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
See you, Tom.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
See you, Tom.
All right, Melissa, please read the next item.
Okay, item number 5, approve resolution expressing appreciation to Lisa Westbrook on her retirement from Tuolumne Utilities District on June 9th, 2022.
Okay, good morning, President Balin, members of the board, and the public that are here with us today. I have the pleasure today of presenting a resolution of appreciation for Lisa Westbrook, who retired just last Thursday on June 9th from the district after 14 years of service. Lisa's on a camping trip right now. She's already started her retirement, so she's not going to be with us today, I don't think, unless she's watching on YouTube. Lisa has worked for the district for 14 years. Her and I think I started about 6 months before her, so we worked together a lot and directly in my department for the last 3 years. So I've known Lisa very well and am super happy for her. I will read through her resolution and then have a couple extra comments, and then if anyone else would like to add some comments as well, that would be welcomed. So before you for consideration is a resolution of the Board of Directors of Tuolumne Utilities District expressing appreciation to Lisa Westbrook on her retirement, June 9th, 2022. Whereas after a 14-year career, Lisa Westbrook retired from her position as Community Affairs Specialist of Tuolumne Utilities District on June 9th, 2022. And whereas Lisa began her career for the district on June 30th, 2008 as Customer Service Supervisor. She was later reassigned to Customer Public Relations, which most recently was changed to Community Affairs Specialist, a position she served to her retirement date. And whereas during Lisa's tenure, the district has undergone many changes, including evolving job responsibilities, management, regulatory environment, technology, and software systems to which she adapted. And whereas Lisa has valuable institutional knowledge of the district and community based on her years of experience. And whereas Lisa built many productive and positive relationships over the years with local and state partners and stakeholders and represented the district well. And whereas Lisa was involved in several successful grant applications, including most recently submitting application for and playing a large role in the district being awarded a Division of Water Resources Urban and Multi-Benefit Relief Grant in the amount of $2.8 million for the Mount Provo Transmission and Intertie Project. And whereas Lisa demonstrated dedication to the district and the community, taking her time with each public member encounter, making sure their questions were answered and they were left with a pleasant experience. Now, therefore, the Board of Directors of Tuolumne Utilities District on the 14th day of June 2022 expresses its sincere appreciation for Lisa Westbrook for her public service and contributions to the district and its customers, and wishes her well in her retirement. So this is a good summary of what Lisa has done, but obviously we can't put everything in a one-page resolution, but I just want to say that Lisa was very dedicated to the district. was always here, was willing to help and take on something extra if someone was missing. She was out there in the community, and we have gotten a lot of good responses and compliments on Lisa's work out in the community and with partners. So I know Don has heard those as well. So really appreciate Lisa's work. She is moving to Oregon with her family and really excited to do that and be with her family and her husband, who also is retiring from the district. He may not retire, he's working it out. But just a very pleasant woman to be around, and I had the pleasure of working with her for this last 14 years, and I just want to wish her well. So anyone else have anything to say about Lisa?
Yeah, I'll be brief. You know, I've got to work with Lisa for most of her time here, you know, closely. She was very beneficial to me. I was amazed. I didn't know all that she did until I became GM about a year ago or so. It's amazing what all the little tasks that she acquired over all these years. It's remarkable to me, really. And a team of one, that's an awful lot to have in one house. So she did an amazing job doing all those things, and she was a pleasure to work with. She really was. So anyway, happy to see her retire. I'm tired of people retiring before me. So
I have just a couple of things to add to that. I think it was well done. Yeah, you know, life's full of these missed opportunities to tell people how you feel about them. And of course, Lisa's not here. She's already started. She's camping. And so I'm happy for her because that seems like that's something she's always enjoyed. But two observations that were covered in the resolution. One is adaptability. A lot of people don't have that anymore. And Lisa certainly had that in her numerous roles here at the district. She was always helpful, as Dawn had said, and willing to take on other tasks. And so her adaptability in an organization like ours is super important because we just don't have specialized people. We got people that have to wear many different hats. So that's one thing. The other thing is cheerfulness. She just was kind of a bubbly, cheerful person, left a pleasant sort of aftertaste with everyone that I know she interacted with. And that can be challenging in today's environment, especially when you're in the leading edge of public affairs and PR. And she did a really good job at that. So she's going to be missed. Actually, I got in my mail a backflow device notice, which is something Lisa inherited from engineering years ago. And I thought, this is just perfect. Lisa leaves, and yesterday I opened that, and that was all she left her mark. And Lisa, I will be making sure my backflow device is doesn't. I wish her well.
Thank you. Any other staff wish to comment?
I don't have anything to add other than what they said in there, and we wish Lisa well. And yeah, she's been very, very integral to the district.
Thank you. Same. Yes, David.
I had the opportunity to work with Lisa for about 12 years during my time as superintendent. What I most liked about her was dependability. She would put out the public notices for different operations that collection staff was doing in the public, such as, you know, flagging on different roads, or annual flushing during the parade, prior to the parade for the Muddlewood Roundup and things like that. And the dependability came in if you got her voicemail and, you know, left her the voicemail of what we're doing, you could just depend on it, you know, being followed through with. If you spoke to her, you know, she actually picked up her phone and talked to her. It was done very quickly to get the information out to the public. So Lisa, we wish you well. Enjoy your retirement.
Thanks, David. Yes, yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of working with Lisa outside of TUD, you know, as being in business downtown and whatnot, and seeing her represent TUD at many different functions and whatnot. And she always represented TUD very well. And then once I got on this board and was able to work with her, like for instance, down at the Home and Garden Show. I mean, she always did such a great job of getting us board members, or at least me anyway, prepared to meet the public there in that environment. She always had her handouts out. She always had her talking points all set up for us, and just very professional and on task. And I'm very pleased working with her, and I wish her well as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Anything to add?
No, it sounds like they covered it. The only thing Jeff left out was her candy bowls.
Always have candy.
Yes, I want to wish Lisa well also. She was very adaptable and she was a people person for sure. And she really went the extra mile to make sure we had a really great presentation at the Home and Garden. And I'm sure she did that in a lot of places I'm not even aware of. So we wish her well. And is there any member of the public that wishes to comment before we vote on her resolution? Oh, okay, go. So John, go ahead, please.
Yeah, obviously, all of you have said the right descriptions of how valuable she was and basically how friendly and supportive she was as a great representative ambassador for TUD. The one thing you didn't mention, again, I know you can't get it all into a one-page thing, is how many years she was a presence at the IRWIM at representing TUD in a manner that was both very professional, but also, I had some notes here thinking she was going to be there today, but she had great people skills, not because she put on that presence to represent TUD, but because she naturally cared about people, friendly, people said bubbly, and she just made you feel like that she was interested in you. Not because she was doing it as a professional part of her job, but because that's who she was. So I definitely will miss working with her. The one other thing I'd point out is dealing with many different agencies and entities. When there's a request, it often is received, and at some point you get a response back. With Lisa, when I would contact her with a request, it was prompt and responsive almost immediately. As quickly as she could, she followed through, which was always a good benefit and image for TUD to have someone like that who was so prompt and responsive. So I will miss her. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comments, then I'll entertain a motion for to adopt the resolution. Yes, go ahead.
Madam President, I would like to make the, scroll back up here. I would like to make the motion that the board, by motion, adopt resolution as expressing appreciation for Lisa Westbrook on her retirement from Tuolumne Utilities District after 14 years of service on June 9th, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none and no member of the public wishing to add, then we will go ahead and call for the vote, Melissa.
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Reno.
Aye.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to our next agenda item, item number 6, which is,
I need to recuse myself from this item.
oh, thank you, Jeff.
Step outside.
Thank you. Yes. Melissa, would you please read the agenda item?
Okay, item number 6, consider approval of agreement regarding water main extension and water service to a non-adjacent parcel in the community of Jamestown, Curtin, Dozier. Apologize if I pronounced that.
Thank you.
You got it right. Antonio Ramirez, Engineering Customer Service. I'm going to try and run through my items today kind of quickly, being that you have a pretty full agenda. This item before you is a developer agreement to extend a public water main to serve 2 properties in the community of Jamestown. Eric's got he's driving the maps for me today. Here we've got an aerial view of the site. It's near, actually it's a portion of the old Sonora Mine site in Jamestown. It's adjacent to what was the old harbor, I think it's the old Harvard Pit, which is now the Whiskey Lake. You'll see there in the blue dashed line, that is the proposed alignment for the water main. It is going to, the way they have it proposed, it's gonna go, I think it's about 740 feet to the Dosher property. This will require a developer agreement, as all water main extensions do. And the developer agreements have conditions for the developer to, they'll be hiring a proper licensed contractor, they'll be building the water main to our standards under our inspections, be providing as-built drawings, that sort of thing. You'll see though that the Curtin property is not adjacent to the end of this proposed main. Eric, would you be able to switch to the next slide? The exhibit map?
Bear with me here. I'm a slow navigator. There we go.
All right, so the reason that we're currently not proposing the main all the way to the Curtin property is because upon a field visit with myself and Matt Nolte, it didn't make sense to go that direction. You'll also see a hatch section there along the southerly property line of the Doshers. What we decided when we were out there is that, you know, the main looks good going up the driveway, but then we felt that maybe looping to the west would be a better way of extending this main in the future. You could loop it back into High School Road all the way to the bottom left of the screen, potentially in the future. The looping is something that we really wanted to consider given the fact that the properties all around the Curtins and Doshers is industrial and fire flow requirements might be kind of high. So that's why we are not wanting to go all the way up to the Curtin property, because we think there's a better location to continue extending this main and loop it. And that going to the Curtin property just seemed to be just not in the interest of the district. The developer agreement has a special condition for dedicating this easement, but also an area of benefit for potentially three parcels that are adjacent to the proposed sewer water main. And I think with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you. Yes, go ahead, Director
I
Ball.
have a question. Are there any fire main or fire hydrants proposed on this?
Yeah, so it's a typical standard for all water mains is that there will be a blow off, but essentially, which is a full-fledged fire hydrant. So yes, that symbol at the end is a fire hydrant, and that's what we intend to have installed.
You know, it was my understanding that the district's adopted mainline extension minimum size was 8-inch. This one's listed for 6-inch. Is there?
Right, we felt that because it was going to be looped, that a 6 would be adequate. If this was a dead end line, then an 8-inch may be considered. The 8-inch in our water rules is the standard. However, operational and engineering concerns, that type of thing, we sometimes do go to a 6-inch. And the reason here too also is that you're going to have only a few properties for quite some time on it. And an 8-inch line, it's not going to get flushed, and it's going to need to be, our staff will have to go out there more than once a year to flush it, potentially to keep the water fresh. So the idea was that because it's going to be looped and there's not that many people on it, the 6 inches in the best interest of not only the property owners, but the district.
Okay. Will there be adequate flow to the fire hydrant if it's needed for fire protection?
Yes, yes. We don't know the actual flow rate, but that's not something that we would be considering in this case. But 6 inches standard, will provide adequate fire flow.
For residential purposes, 6 inches fine. If there were to be commercial development, light industrial development to the west here, then there would likely need to be this loop in order to fulfill 1,500 gallon a minute fire flow, in which roughly maybe half the flow, 750, would come from each direction, portion of it through this 6-inch line, and then the other portion through the line on High School Road.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Yes, Director Rainier.
So my question is, and I'm pretty sure I already know the answer, but water that will be provided for this is coming from that new tank above Jamestown?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Because that means that there'll be plenty of flow.
Good. Let's see, Director Murphy, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. Thank you for calling on me because I don't know how to, from the phone, raise my hand. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I just wanted a clarification. From reading the information in the agenda packet, it looks like the developer is paying for the line, this line that goes out to the properties, and then the district will be taking that on as property and maintaining it. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, all cost of construction will be on the property owners. When the main is completed, they'll grant the pipeline to us and we will maintain and operate it going forward at our expense.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions, Director Murphy?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
That's it. Okay, great. All right.
Yeah. Director Murphy, from your phone, if you'd like to raise your hand, you would press *9.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
But we'll make sure that we call on you too. Okay, so this came through committee and a committee won because Jeff recused himself. And I got all my questions answered and I appreciate all the time. I think the level of information that we're getting at the committee is really great. We really, from the maps to, it turns out the property owner was on hand to answer questions too. So, appreciate your thoroughness here. Is there any member of the public now that wishes to comment or have any questions? No? All right. Cindy, anyone out in the public?
No, there's nothing.
Great. Okay, if there's no further discussion, then I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I don't know whether I have to say something special or not.
I would second that motion. Oh, do.
Well, I'm just gonna say, I make a motion to approve the variance for this project.
Okay, let me just read it. To authorize the general manager to execute the agreement regarding water main extension and water service to a non-adjacent parcel in the community of Jamestown, Curtin, Dozier.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
That's what you want. All right, so let's take a roll call. And David seconds that.
Okay. Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Raymond.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0. Director Kearns recused.
Thank you. Great. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Steve.
This one's done. You okay for the next one?
All right, well, get Jeff seated here and then we'll just move on to item 7.
Okay, item number 7, consider approval of amendment for auxiliary water service to Tamarind Estates Mobile Home Park, LIC Tamarind Partners.
Thank you.
Okay, me again, Antonio, TUD Customer Service. So the item I have here is a amendment to an existing auxiliary water service to Tamarind Estates Mobile Home Park. Eric, are you gonna be able to put up?
Sorry. Again, your navigator here is having technical problems.
Actually, we don't think we
There's
have,
no.
we have nothing for them, so, okay. The Tamarind Estates is a 89-unit mobile home park. In 2018, we entered into an auxiliary water service agreement with them because their well periodically has issues. And so occasionally they need water service. So that agreement, they prepaid capacity, a little bit of capacity for this agreement, but it had a term which is set to expire next year. 2 drawbacks for the owner currently, and is the reason why they're requesting this amendment is that one, it's expiring next year, but also their primary concern is that any capacity they pay for isn't really clear that it would remain with the property. So they've requested this amendment to make clear whether or not the capacity is going to remain with the property and to extend the agreement. Last year, the original agreement had a provision where I would annually look at the usage. And if the usage exceeded the 200,000 gallons that they had paid for, that additional capacity fees would be paid. Well, last year it did significantly to the point where the capacity fees that they do now currently need to pay is about $40,000. So this agreement was drawn up to reflect the customer's request and is now being presented to you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, go
Lee.
ahead, please. Yeah.
I've got several. Can you explain the math behind the connection fee, $40,181?
Sure. So trying to remember how I do my math there. So essentially what I've done is that, it's a great question. I'm going to try and do this here. The ESFR is equivalent to 264 gallons a day. So if you were to take the 523 gallons and divide that by 264, you're, there's my building.
Yeah, I can try to help
Yeah.
here. So they exceeded their 200,000 allotment by 323,000 gallons. An average, let's say customer, right, uses 265 gallons per day, which, sorry, I don't have this right off the top of my head, just multiplied by 365 days a year is 96,000 gallons. Just call it 100,000 gallons. They exceeded their allotment by 323,000, so that's roughly 3.23 homes. And if you multiply our water capacity fee for a single family residence, which is 8,000.
You use about $7,500.
7,500, okay. And then you multiply that by 3.23, and then there's some additional fees in here that I'd have to account for. But essentially what we've calculated here is that their capacity fee is equivalent to so many houses. And in a perfect world, they would have paid for the entire mobile home park up front. But we know realistically that that's probably $750,000 or something like that, way beyond their reach. And so since they're only using this as an auxiliary, our original contract only provided for a 5-year term. And so now they owe us $40,000, but they're like, well, I don't want to pay it if this agreement is going to expire next year, which it would. So I'm repeating what Antonio said, but I'm trying to provide the context here. Is this amendment that your board is considering would make this a permanent agreement and would allow them to build capacity as they go, so that someday in the future, if every year they pay 40,000, I don't know, at some point they will be fully connected to the district. We will be made whole. They'll be paying the then current capacity fee as they go, and they could effectively go off of their well and become full-time customers. That's the idea. But for some reason, we put a 5-year sunset on this agreement at the very beginning. I think because we wanted to kind of really incentivize them to expedite their connection. And it didn't work because 5 years isn't enough time for this particular owner to come up with, say, $750,000 to connect. And there wasn't really a need. So they're well on average. Maybe has an issue for a few days, maybe a few weeks out of the year, and that's what they need this agreement for. Sorry to rehash that, but I didn't answer your question directly. I need to get into the math. I don't have it in front of me right now, but rest assured we'll make sure that the fee represents the correct amount before they pay it. And technically, we're due this amount right now. Technically, they're already on notice that they owe us 40,000, and they are just very reluctant to pay, knowing that next year, if this board doesn't adopt the amendment, it's all for kind of nothing.
Are there any past capacity fees that were paid the are in addition to the 40,000. And I kind of ran through the math, kind of did the, not quite the same scenario. I used 400 cubic feet per month to figure out, but the way the wording was in the information here, I thought they were 500,000 beyond their 200,000.
They are.
Actually making it.
Thank you. Now the math works out. You saved me, David, because then it's more like 5.23 times the single family. Thank you. Because I was sitting here on.
If you divided the 40,181 by 7,441, that should be your ESFR.
Okay.
Certainly, will our capacity charges to them into the future, as our capacity charges change and go up, will that go up that they're, paying principal and interest to this? Or is this the district is financing a commercial entity of a mobile home park, on?
They'll pay the then current board adopted capacity fees at the time in which it's audited on an annual basis. So this 40,000 represents our current capacity fees, which ironically are indexed to the board adopted in the water rules and regs. So each year they go up depending on the construction cost index. And Dawn just approved a 3.1% increase effective July 1 every year. So whatever they pay will be based on the current capacity.
Okay, and the capacity fee of a mobile home versus a residential, home on a lot is different than, and also an apartment is different than a mobile home. So it's only a percentage of the actual, there's a little bit of equivalence there.
Well, technically you're correct. If they came in and applied for service for how many is 89, however many units they have, we would be using what's in the water rules and regulations. There's a point, is it 0.8? Yeah, it's a 0.8 of a standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. But because the route in which their building capacity is based on a volume basis, that is somewhat irrelevant right now. Their capacity is based on the fact that they are, after they pay for this, they will have 723,000 gallons per year of capacity. So it's two different methods. They both work, but because this board has allowed them to build capacity in as they go based on volume, that this is the route they're buying their capacity. If they just came in and wanted to pay one shot, it would be 89 times 0.8 times our capacity fee for a standard home.
Now, will the next time that they're on the hook to pay capacity fees, will that be when they exceed the, is it a combination of, is it 700,000 or we're looking at 500,000? So it's 700. Will that be the next time that they exceed an annual allotment of 700,000?
Correct.
That kind of brings up the other issue of, we know that there's 89, we're almost co-business and existing there. And I see some issues looking at it from the standard of treating everybody equal within the public. I.e., would this board authorize, other entities to, have the same deal? Kind of piecemeal your capacity fees versus.
It's a good question. The board has in the past on other mobile home parks. Cascade is one that comes into mind, and Tamarin is another. It is not in a perfect world. In a perfect world, someone will come in with $750,000 and buy the whole park's capacity. But from a practical sense, the realities are that we have a 89 unit somewhat income restricted, age restricted mobile home park right in the middle of our service area that is relying on a singular well, that's got supply issues from time to time. And we are the provider of first resort and last resort here in the county. And as a community member, I think the previous board decided, you know what, we'll make them pay for their share, but we're gonna let them do it over time. It's totally up to the board how they want to treat that, but from a staff perspective, we think it's a good middle ground that doesn't harm our existing ratepayers, but provides some level of security without subsidizing anyone in this case. They do pay their monthly water bill, so they pay a monthly water bill and they'll pay consumption for whatever they use.
Okay, will that, I want to be totally sympathetic to, fixed incomes and, what it's actually worth. But has a district, will that cause us any problems? Because capacity fees are either buying existing capacity within our system or are used to increase the capacity within our system. And by going through and piecemealing in, little bits at a time, we may have the capacity for the 700,000 gallons on an annual basis. But if ultimately it comes up to 1.2 million gallons needed on an annual basis, will we have the capacity without having to take on a project that we don't have the funding for to support?
I mean, we do now, right? We do for this, we do for quite a bit more. I mean, we're talking about, five homes. And I think the other consideration is this mobile home park likely will have a problem with their well. I mean, they have historically, they will in the future. So if the board decides not to move forward in this fashion, you could, and we have in the past received requests directly from owners of mobile home parks where they come and plead. It's a dire emergency. They have no water to serve their customers. And then it's a really difficult decision you'll have to make is whether or not you want to bail them out. And this somewhat formalizes an arrangement that will clearly delineate their responsibilities, make them pay if they use more, and allows us some legitimacy. Otherwise, they come in and we have to scramble to come up with some agreement and find the water, and the board is put in a difficult situation, possibly saying no to somebody that really needs it at that time.
And I certainly understand that, but to me, it feels like we're setting precedents. And, the pathway that this agreement's done may be, followed by others. And I just don't want to see the district get into trouble where, money up front would fund a, capacity issue within our system. But, then the ratepayers end up, because we would have to do improvements, ratepayers would then be on the hook to subsidize until such time as the capacity fees are fully paid to become whole.
The board would, we would have to make that, if the capacity didn't exist, then we would need to have some big discussions here about how the implications of that, not just to Cameron, but to all development in the county or in this service area.
Thank you very much.
Eric, I want to add one thing and go back a little bit before the 2018 agreement. This park, along with Cascade and another one in Columbia, had what were called Cascade, and the park in Columbia still have this arrangement where they have emergency water service, where the service is shut off, and upon request, the district turns it on and then back off after they use it. And there was a certain arrangement for billing that was a little bit different. It was very cumbersome because as you go back and forth all the time, it just takes a lot of staff time. So when the emergency agreement expired or was going to expire, we went to this because at the time the general manager felt, well, you're setting aside capacity in a way, we might as well collect something from them. And so it was sort of a, a step towards kind of solving what's going on with what you're saying, where, you've got this capacity that we're potentially setting aside for people. We felt, well, it's better to collect something from that. And so what we did with this agreement was looked at the history under the emergency agreement and collected that 200,000 gallons a day, because that's what the history showed they were using. They ended up, having more issues than normal last year, and so now it's going up. But the hope is there'll be a point where they'll sort of tap out, or cap out, and it won't be going over whatever they paid for.
I think Director Burns had.
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Eric, did I hear you say that this isn't the first time we've done something like this?
Well, and what Antonio is alluding to is what I was referring to, is we've had arrangements in the past for emergency water where we didn't collect the capacity fee. And so his description is accurate. It was, the board was like, hey, or the general manager at the time said, we need to stop this and at least collect something, because we are in essence, as Director Boatwright referred to, somewhat reserving capacity. As soon as you take capacity fee, you really are obligated to reserve that capacity.
Yeah, well, I like this arrangement better than that. And we have a well customer that that we feel pretty confident is going to need some help in the future. I think we can agree on that, right? So, okay. How about a worst case scenario? What happens if we approve this and we go a couple of years and they say, you know what, we can't afford to pay these. What happens then?
Great question. So if they decide they can't pay the audited, the 40,000, then technically they only have 200,000 that they've paid in capacity. And I think we would have to talk to Jesse about what the implications are. Either they're in breach contract and they don't have any reserve capacity, or they have only the original 200,000 that they paid for. But we would lock off the meter because technically we're due this amount. If in the future they don't pay their water bill, again, they get locked off, just like any other customer that doesn't pay their water bill.
Okay. All right.
I think we've discussed a little bit of this in committee, which was this has been an ongoing situation. It's really panicky for folks on limited income when the well is not producing, and that this seemed to be a way to phase them in and remediate a situation similar to Del Ordo up there. They run out and they call us, and then we're kind of scrambling. So I thought that this was a way to bring them in and correct something that has been ongoing, and we can only expect more well failures throughout the community. So, yeah, go ahead, Director Reagan.
So I don't have anything against the new agreement. I think this is the way to go. But the one thing that surprised me, and I think I may be wrong, but I think I was on the board when we okayed this original agreement or made some sort of adjustment to it. And we kind of got backed into it. And it was exactly what both of you were saying, is that the board felt that, there was a lot of people in that park that were on fixed income, and, not getting any water is not going to be a good thing at all. So, but where I was going to go with this is that I would really like to suggest that we, when we get around to looking at the water rules and regulations, that we re-examine that mobile home amount. Because having inspected homes for as long as I have, and many mobile and modular homes, especially ones in parks, they all have vegetation that gets watered. And there's no way that they use less water at all than a normal house. I mean, it's not like you got a little tiny trailer type arrangement. These are usually big double wides, 3-4 bedroom, 2 bath situations, and with vegetation all around them, their gardens and all that. And So I would like to have that revisited when we go back to water rules and regulations.
Thank you. Director Murphy, do you have any comments or questions?
She had her hand up.
Director Murphy? Did you say she had her hand up?
She did,
Okay.
and she's online.
Maybe she's muted.
Director Murphy, we can't hear you.
I just sent her a message. Seem to unmute her.
She is on place.
What's the numbers to get to unmute? Maybe that's what she's having a problem.
Oh, how do you, good question.
Well, we'll give her a few minutes before we vote on it.
She is unmuted. Her second instance is not, she's not even.
I had her before.
I don't see her listed under the participants.
It's a
Oh,
phone number.
unless it's
She does it.
the phone number,
831 phone number.
1831.
It says
Oh, yeah. 8 minutes.
Trying.
yeah, she can hear. She's unmuted there.
Disconnect
She's
connection.
muted and it's just saying ask.
She's actually listed twice. When in doubt, reconnect. Turn it all the way off, turn it fully back.
You know, maybe we could just, somebody use their cell phone and just call her and put her on speakerphone.
There you go. That'll work.
I could do it.
I can do, I'm talking to her right now.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I would say we need more.
It's too hot for that sort of stuff, Director.
Can she try to speak?
He's cool, he's the one.
Hello,
There she
thank you.
goes.
There she is.
Okay.
We can hear you.
I got a notification on there that I had been muted, and so I'm doing the star 6 on my phone, it's not doing anything. So thanks for the workaround, I appreciate it.
Great.
My concern on I have similar, in listening to what all the other directors are saying, the concern that I have on this is that it is a specialty agreement. I, as you know, teach about climate change, so I'm very aware of kind of the difficulties that we're going to be adding to our list as a water provider. I think that there's a real chance that we would find in the next 5 years that their well will produce significantly less. I'm worried about the idea of making an agreement at this time in perpetuity. I think that locks us into something that we would then have an opportunity to readdress if, I get that, let me back up for a second. In hearing what staff has said, I understand that we need an agreement with them. And that we want to be providing the water that they've already paid for in the equivalent of 5 capacity fees. that base amount that anybody with a capacity fee that has paid that gets. My concern is that I do think that they will keep needing more and more water. And I think what I heard said by staff was that the reason this agreement was created this way in the first place was to incentivize them to actually pay the capacity fees, at least at a quicker rate, if not in full. And I understand that in full is a lot of money and would be hard to come up with. But I think I would like to see us keep in place that that original intent, which was if they are going to be switching over to using more and more TUD water, that their capacity fee matches what they're going to be using. And in looking towards the water future, my guess is any wells that are having trouble now are just going to have more trouble. I don't think that situation is going to get better. So I think if we were to do, I understand that a 1-year agreement doesn't feel very stable to anyone. So perhaps another 5-year agreement on this plan. And within this plan, I understand how it feels fair at this moment, but it would give TUD and staff and the board of directors room to relook at that agreement in 5 years. And I think the fact that they feel that they have leverage by not paying their bill is a really worrisome thing to me. Because as we know, each of us that receives a water bill from TUD, that it is important that each of us pays our bill, and that supports the system that we all rely on. And I think that it's a bad faith move on their part to be holding back that payment and saying we want something more from this. I don't think that's a fair. I don't think that's a fair thing to do. And so, because if all of our customers did that, we would certainly have a problem, right? If all the whole section of our future developments that we're just going to pay what we can. Then I agree. A couple of directors mentioned what kind of residents are we setting there. I understand that we've done a lot of things in the past that have been that TUD has not had the opportunity through time to correct some of these what we look back on to be agreements that may not have been in best interest of the district. And I think that having a 5-year agreement instead of I don't want to do it in perpetuity on this. I would be willing to do a 5-year, but I don't want to do it in perpetuity. I think that puts the district in a position where we don't have the flexibility in the future. So that's my inclination. Or my request in this motion is that the motion wouldn't be written as it is in the minutes, but instead of in perpetuity, it'd be a 5-year agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to sign out and re-sign in and hope that corrects the problem.
Great, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Madam President, I wanted to bring up a point that in my discussions with them and TUD staff, that the issues that they've had have been more mechanical. They're not related to water supply.
Yeah.
So there's that. That doesn't mean that it won't happen someday, but that's just want to clarify that.
I also think water quality, I'm going back, 15 years, seemed like water quality was an issue all at times as well. Failed back to East.
Could be.
Because I think that they've done some stuff to fix that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Director Cruz.
Yeah, I respect Director Murphy's points that she made there. I disagree a little bit. What I hear, the comments I heard from Director Murphy, I think would be maybe more valid if this was for instance, a subdivision that was coming through the planning stages, and these were going to be brand new connections into the future. But I'm concerned that we've got a mobile home park. Usually, a lot of them there will be on fixed incomes. They're existing homes. This is that's being served by a well that is in peril, and TUD in a lot of ways, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, we're the Alamo when it comes to people who need to get water, especially if you're on a well and your well is failing. Sometimes, a lot of times, we're the only option, correct? And it's been that way for a long time, and I think it's going to continue to be that way into the future. And I think we have somewhat of an obligation to be able to help customers in this type of a situation, and especially where you have existing homes that are already there. And so, yeah, I understand all the concerns. I really do. But this isn't a new project. This is an existing customer and existing homes, and I think we need to do what we can to help them, provided they pay their own way.
To your point, we are the Alamo. We are, and we have been many, many times. Sometimes the court order receivership situation has happened, like what happened with Big Hill and Monte Grande. So that's not the best route for TUD and its customers either. So this maybe this workaround, whether it's in perpetuity or a 5-year extension, I'm good with either way. But we certainly wouldn't want to take over that system because it fell apart. Those people, they're not just fixed, but they're very extremely low income people as well. So that mobile home park will continue to exist, whether this agreement happens or not. Is, what's next for TUD?
Director Reagan?
Yeah, I agree with Director Kearns completely. And you beat me to the punch. I was going to bring up Big Hill and we having to take that over. And that was with no agreement. We just, boom, it's yours. Fix it.
Big Hill and Monte Grande, though, were a little bit different in taking over the systems. It was state ordered, and the state actually ponied up funding to do some major improvements on both of those, correct?
Initially, not enough. The staff had to find additional funding through the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, the stimulus back in 2008. But if it wasn't for that money, we wouldn't have had enough money to rebuild the entire system.
And the surcharge.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I kind of jumped in there. I don't want to take the floor.
I think he had his hand up next.
Yeah, I don't know where it states this, but I know I've read it, I've seen it. Maybe it's in the water rules and regs, maybe it's in the formation documents of Tuolumne Utilities District, but we have an obligation, from the way I understood it, to provide water to people that need it in our service area. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm about 99% sure that is the case, and that would be where this would fall right in there, and that's why the state came in and made us take over Big Hill and Monte Grande.
The question I would have for that is, and I agree, if somebody's thirsty, you give them a drink of water. But what level of service is TUD obligated or morally obligated to provide, to support that? Remembering that this is ultimately still a private enterprise for money, for profit, that is coming to us. I'm a little bit concerned about sidelining our water rules and regulations, our adopted water rules and regulations on, specialized deals. And will this agreement then reset the cap of water and capacity fees charged, both past and present, to 723,000? 181 comes to mind, but I could be
Is that a question for staff?
No, I was just adding that. But is that capacity fee then, paid for the $723,000?
Yes.
So does our agreement then change to paying a certain amount of capacity fees each year? Or just the next time that they exceed that allotment on an annual basis? Thinking about our system, and if a development comes in and there's, only an 8-inch line serving an area, and somebody else buys up the capacity fees, that's where we would get into the problem of, if we'd had the full capacity fees on this, we would have allotted that amount of capacity to that system. Future development coming in later would, then have to increase the size and capacity of the system.
It isn't so much capacity in pipeline, it's just, it would solely be on source of supply. We have plenty of treatment and pipeline capacity to deliver water to Tamarack. Even if it was all eating up, if the entire park came home. I do understand what you're saying about potentially in the future, but it's audited on an annual basis, so keep our eyes on it. Staff could even, as they read the meter on a bi-monthly basis, we could track it that way, so we know when they cross that threshold, and can throw up the red flag that, hey, you're gonna be owing the district something, or even if there was some issue related to capacity at that time, we could address it then more immediately rather than retroactively on an annual basis. It's just simpler to track something in this way for staff, and simpler for the developer to pay once a year on whatever balance they have or what they exceeded.
Okay. Another issue being, looked into this, or looking at this, how's our base rate applied to the water that they consume?
It's the meter size. So just like anyone in the district, it's your base rate, you pay based on your meter size, and then you pay consumption based on our consumptive rate. And so they're treated just like any other customer.
I think, I'm
I'm
I think
ready to hear if there's any public comment.
Yeah, I want to agree with Director Ringen on his comment about I guess maybe in the charter of TUD, seems like it might even go back to the TCWD number 2 days.
You might be right.
Yeah, because I remember something about that as well. Anyway, and I understand Director Boatwright's point about it's a for-profit entity and whatnot, and I get that. And they should pay their fair share, and I think they probably are, because staff calculated the fees that they're to pay, correct? And we're comfortable with those, or staff is. But on the other hand, we don't want to unfairly burden them just because they are a for-profit entity either. So as long as we're treating them, as Eric said here, just like any other customer, I think we're okay on the consumption charges and the size of meter and all the other criteria that staff would use. What I would hate to see is that if we make it too rough on them and they can't or won't pay these fees, and their well does fail down the line, and then the state steps in or and makes us take it over, and then we don't have any fees to pay for it. So anyway, I'm in favor of the resolution as written personally.
Is there any, at this time, any public comment?
Director Murphy has her hand.
Oh, okay, go ahead, please. Sorry.
All right. Is this working now?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, I really have a hard time with how often in meetings we talk about the kind of what if scenario if a small group of people have an issue with how we're doing things. And I think that I just heard that. And I think that we need to make our policies based on what is on good policy strategies that we use across the board. And I think Director Boat, I realize I missed some of it, so please tell me if you already discussed this and maybe catch me up. I think what I heard Director Boatwright speak to this, and I think that I heard Director Kern kind of say the opposite. So I get that we're charging for the consumption, that we have a meter connection charge for, is it 4 or 5 meters on that capacity charges?
I think we're all kind of estimating around 5 ESFR.
Okay, so we have, so let's go with estimates then. We have 90 residences on 5 capacity charges right now. And that was based on the assumption that it was an emergency use thing, that this was not their primary water supply. This agreement was made to be a supplementary if they needed it. It wasn't meant to be their main water supply. I do feel that the district would be making a bad call to do this in perpetuity, because I do think that they are going to continue having more issues with their well. And I think I heard one of the staff members say that. I'm not exactly sure who said that, but that there is a reason from the staff side that there's a reasonable thought that might be the case. From my side of things, looking at I am right now doing a field class up at Sonora Pass. So looking at the west side and the east side of the Sierras, and I look around me, I don't even see a patch of snow. So I would encourage us to really think about the fact that the historic context in which we've been running TUD is historic, and that as we move forward, we need more flexibility and more ability to pivot. I think by making an agreement that is in perpetuity, we're locking ourselves into something that's based on past. And I think that we need to be more well balanced as we're moving forward in this thought process. So I'm really encouraging us not to lock ourselves into an in perpetuity agreement that is based on 4 to 5 meters supplying 90 residences. I think that isn't going to serve the district well in the future. And I think that staff would agree that the capacity charges are charged for a reason, that they are to make sure our O&M costs of our system are paid for. And when we're talking about having the difference, having 90 residences supported by the equivalent of 5 capacity fees, that's not something we want to carry into the future, right? And I think this county has allowed developers to develop for-profit things where they are, like in this instance, that problem should have been solved before we had 90 residences on this system. And I understand that they built it based on that well. And so I understand you can't, like when it was built, they may have thought that would be sufficient for what they built. But I think Tuolumne and planning needs to also be really in the future looking to make sure that things that are coming on to, if something is going to be on the TUD system, that they realize that is realized from the beginning, and that we are able to function accordingly. And I think that's going to get more and more important in the future. The whole reason for saying all of this is I think that we want to continue helping people have in the county have reliable, healthy drinking water. We want to be able to be a source for that community, but we also need to be fair to the entire system, and we need to make sure that going forward, that people who are on the system and relying on the system are part of paying for that system as we move forward. And I think putting this into in perpetuity is going to put us in a very weak position for that ever happening with this development. And I think the 5-year agreement would be in alignment with what the original agreement was. And I think I heard staff say that that was to nudge them towards having the capacity fee be more realistic to their water use. And I think that nudge and that incentive, that by having it be a 5-year agreement, that gets them 5 years to figure out what's going on with their well, figure out what the real water needs are, and come up with a plan to meet their water needs. And I think a 5-year plan would be a smart thing for the district to do. I think in perpetuity would be personally, I think, irresponsible.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on this?
No hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I'll bring it back to us. Yes, Director Ringen.
No, go ahead.
Bring it back to the board for a vote. Yes, Director.
Well, we need to make a motion first, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I'd like to do.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to have to authorize the general manager to execute the amendment for auxiliary water service to Tamaron Estates Mobile Home Park -LIC Tamaron Partners.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Director Boatright.
Staff, what did you say the total number of connections equivalent for this capacity fee of 40,000 was?
If you take 40,000 and divide it by 7,441, that'll give you the USFIs.
Okay. 40,000 divided by 770.
7,441.
Thank you. I do this thing. That's 5.37.
So it's approximately 5.37 homes in terms of the capacity, the capacity that they're paying for. Additional to, I think it was like 2.33 or something that they paid for additional.
Okay, because I keep coming up with a higher number as far as, but I base that on the 400 cubic foot per month equivalent.
That's the reason. I mean, it's good, but no, the 265 gallons per day is our district average residential use, which is not 400 cubic feet. It's more than that because we see the average resident exceeds just the base charge, usually, especially in the summer. So the calculations, the same calculation you're doing with a different input.
400 cubic feet is about 100 gallons a day.
Thank you.
Director Ringen.
So for Antonio and Eric, this new capacity fee and the 40,000 has to do with an overage of water that they use from what they were allowed through the original agreement, correct?
Correct.
And it's that we are serving 89 parcels, but only for a few days every year. So it's not like we're letting Tamaron Estates get a free ride for the other 84 homes. It's just there are 89 homes that are going to be served on only a few days a year when the well isn't working. And as the well, if the well were to go downhill, then there'd be new charges, new capacity charges and so on, correct?
Correct.
Don't see the problem.
Director Ring, that I agree with you that it's only a few days out of the year, but what you just touched upon was it's a few days that we're serving 89, not year round that we're serving 14 connections, or however many of the previous and new capacity fees adopt. Suddenly you've got a shock load going to your system where water operators, hopefully you're watching tank levels and increasing capacities in treatment plants, because you just got 89 customers, and then say 3 to 5 days later, they shut off. Then you're backtracking and resetting your system as well too. So the capacity fee is to also see that as well. A shock load, if you're serving the 89 year round, it's in the operation and maintenance of the entire system. Whereas when you turn on and turn off, and it's not like just turning on one light bulb in a room, it's like turning on 89 light bulbs in a room, and having to accommodate for that. So that's just plays into part of this, from the understanding point. And I agree, I'm sympathetic. If somebody's thirsty, we need to give them a drink of water. But as we enter into and approve special agreements, and special meaning, not everybody has the same agreement, and it's a slope.
Oh, go ahead, Director Raymond.
First of all, I believe you told us that there's more than enough capacity in that system that will serve them, way more capacity. So we're not going to run into a problem like that. Number two, we have shock loads all the time, do we not, Mr. GM?
Yes.
And we adapt to those. I mean, life is not perfect. So yeah, we may have a shock load. I don't know, I doubt it, but we have them all the time. And staff and employees can take care of it.
Just a little more history might be helpful. Having been here for the 22 years before 2018 in this existing agreement, that's what would happen. Middle of the night, July 4th, their pump goes down, pick up the phone, call Eric call Matt, they'd send a guy out there and open the water. That went on for years and years and years, 15 plus years. And we got no capacity fee for that. I think it was Tom Hagelin, general manager, I said, he agreed with all of you. Look, we need to be sympathetic. We need to be the provider last choice, but at the same time, we got to start protecting our rate. Let's collect something. Let's begin to collect something. And so, at least in this way, we are collecting some capacity and trying to be, good neighbors and good citizens here. So, like I said, I don't know, is the representative for Cameron here? Is someone here? No? So we can't speak for them if they sign on, but if they don't sign on, we're gonna have a choice to make, right? Do we not open up that valve the next time they want water? I don't think we're gonna, as a general manager, I couldn't make that. My decision would be, yeah, we're gonna open up the valve. Give them some water. So it takes two parties to this agreement. I don't know, do you know if they sign on for a 5-year?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah. So that's not, the 5-year deal isn't the worst thing, in my opinion.
I think if you did the 5-year, you need to make it clear that the capacity remains regardless. That's unless they formally disconnect their service. I think that you want to make that at least clear. It's kind of customary that you keep your capacity, what you paid for it, as long as you have a billing account.
So we have a motion and a second. And I think if there's no further discussion, I would like to call for the vote.
Director Murphy has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead, please.
I think I just got called on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I think that what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason people are reluctant to do a 5-year agreement is because you feel like they will turn that down. Is that what I'm mystified by this whole thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not what I intended to say. I had a question is, would they be up for a 5-year agreement versus in perpetuity? And Antonio verbalized by saying he thought so. They're not here to have this conversation.
Right. Yeah. So here's the deal. TUD is in the seat of making the decisions. We're in the seat of making the offer. That is an unusual offer. This is not our standard way of dealing with customers. This is already an accommodation for the situation they're in. And I want to just really, make the point that this year, I think we are going to see them needing more than 4 days. I think when we get into the long, hot part of the summer, we are going to see them needing more capacity down there. And I think that may carry on each year as we go forward. And maybe it gets worse each year, or maybe this year it gets worse, and that's enough to tip the how they decide to do their water. But I think a 5-year agreement is generous on our side. I think we're making a lot of accommodations already. And I think a 1-year agreement would be a really, if I was on either side of that just wouldn't, I can see how that would not be comfortable. It doesn't seem like it's a long enough duration to bother with. I think 5 years would give time on both sides to feel like this agreement is a solid agreement and there's time on this. I don't like to in perpetuity, and I would like to amend the motion to read, I'm pulling the motion back up, 1 second, sorry. I can't see I just have the summary of the recommendation.
Director Murphy,
and in
can I interrupt?
Please.
So procedurally,
Yes,
what
please.
we have to do, there's already been a motion and it's been seconded. So Director Bailey needs a call for the vote. And
no, you can make an amendment before that in parliamentary procedure. That's
only I can.
Oh, okay, only Director Ringen can. If the vote dies, then you can make a new motion.
no, the point in parliamentary procedure of the amending a motion is to amend the motion before it comes to the votes. And then so if I suggest an amendment, the amendment comes to a vote first, and then if my amendment fails, then we vote on the original thing. And that's how parliamentary procedure works. And that's how an amendment works.
I would at this point like to check out that, because we have a set of rules called, what is it, Rosenberg Rules of Order.
Yeah.
Jesse's not here to guide us in this, but I think at this point, it's a he said, she said. Director Reagan, you said only I can amend the motion because you made the motion.
Correct.
Director Murphy, you are saying that is incorrect and anybody can amend the motion. And can you
so I'm most familiar with Robert's Rules of Orders, which is the full set, and the other was made as a more simplified version. And in Robert's Rules of Order, you can make the purpose of it is to be able to change the motion before it is voted upon, and that's what an amendment is about on that. And so if my amendment if I don't get a second on the amendment, then it's a moot point and we vote on the original motion. if I get
Well,
a
we
second
don't
on
use,
it, then my
Robert's Rules of Orders.
amendment.
We use Rosenberg Rules of Orders. We
Dawn's
do,
pulling the.
Rosenberg's is a simplified version of Roberts.
excuse me?
Dawn's looking for a copy.
It's,
of the director's.
Okay,
Got it right here.
But do you?
but regardless, if I put up an amendment and it fails, we go back to the original motion anyway. So there's no negative consequence to that, which is why that's the way it rolls. If you pass a motion, whatever, do it however you want to do it.
Director Murphy, it's being looked up right now as far as the procedural on that.
It'll come to the same. So it's just more efficient to do it the other way, to do it this way.
we're looking it up in the rules about, and any member of the board may make any of the following. Continue to table and to amend the motion. Okay. All right, so let me read this out loud so everybody's, okay. After a motion has been made and seconded, any member of the board may make any of the following motions, including number 3, to amend the motion to modify its wording before adoption, provided the suggested amendment is germane to the original motion. To propose a substitute motion which has the effect of disposing of the motion before the board and eliminating the necessity of a vote on the original motion. To continue the motion to a specific time, to table the motion. So it looks like, the way I read this, that you, as a member of this board, can amend the motion. Does anybody see it that way based on what I read or not?
That sounds good. That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for having this, Ron. All right, so Director Murphy, we
Madam
have,
President, before we, so we clarified that Director Murphy can offer up a amendment to the current motion that is, made and seconded. Does her motion then need a second, or does it go back to the original board member who presented the motion to accept or decline?
so the way I think of it now is that the motion gets amended, the vote is called, it can pass or it can fail. If it passes, it's a done deal. If it fails, then another motion is made. That's the way I hear it. Is there anybody that hears that differently? Because
I agree with that's correct. What your Director President Balin, I believe what you are saying is correct.
Yeah, may I?
Mm-hmm.
After a motion has been made and seconded, any member of the board may make any of the following motions. So I read that as an additional motion. And then there's 6 of them listed here, but the one we're talking about here is item number 3, to amend the motion to modify its wording before adoption, provided the suggested amendment is germane to the original motion. But on the paragraph that leads to this list, it's after a motion has been made and seconded, any member of the board may make any of the following motions. So I read that to be as an additional motion to modify. That's how I see it. So it would, in my way, the way I read it is that Lisa's amendment would have to be, she made the amendment, the motion for amendment, it'd have to be seconded and have to be voted on separately to affect Ron's motion. That's,
Okay, I'm
I
getting
don't know, it could be wrong, but that's the way I read it.
That's correct.
So
I
Lisa,
make a
you would
motion.
make a motion to amend and we would vote on
Correct.
that.
If we need a second,
Correct.
that would be voted on,
Okay,
and then returning to the original motion.
okay, so Lisa, you would make a
As
motion
made or altered.
to amend, and it would have to have a second.
Correct.
Okay, so we're ready to roll. So make it.
Okay, can you read the original motion to me
Okay.
so that I can amend it because it's just changing words in it?
It is recommended that the Board of Directors by motion authorize the general manager to execute the amendment for auxiliary water service to Tamaron Estate Mobile Home Park, LIC Tamaron Partners.
So my question is, how do I make a amendment to the motion? Because it doesn't say in perpetuity in that it doesn't say what the agreement is. And the piece that I would like to change is in perpetuity to a 5-year agreement. Does anybody have any suggestion on how I can add that wording so that that is clear?
Apparently you can just say for 5 years.
Okay.
Okay. So if you can just add for 5 years onto that.
Oh, I see, okay.
Okay, so that's the motion.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Director Murphy, I'm reading through the amendment to agreement here. And it talks about the 5-year agreement and whatnot, but then down and Antonio, correct me if I'm wrong. Right down towards the end. Now therefore, the District of Tamaron Partners hereby amend the June 6, 2018 agreement as follows. And there's 5 items. The one we're talking about here is item number 2, provision number 2. The agreement shall be amended to remove the 5-year term. The new term for the agreement shall be permanent after the date hereof until such time that both parties mutually agree to its termination or until such time Tamaron Partners applies for and pays capacity fees for a permanent connection of TEMHP. So can I make a suggestion to you?
Yes, please.
It sounds like you would like to remove that provision, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So that would be provision number 2, if you want to include that in your motion.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. That's very helpful. Okay, so because I just have the agenda in front of me, I don't have the motion that was proposed. Does someone in the room have the wording, a wording suggestion for how I should make this motion?
Go ahead, David.
Director Murphy, I'll take a stab at it.
Thank you.
The amendment to the original amendment is to remove provision 2. The agreement shall, by removing provision 2, the agreement shall be for 5 years, not have the 5-year clause removed from the original provision.
Would it be possible to just simply say, would it be remaining with the current? How do we just say, don't put that provision in?
Remove provision number 2.
So to change provision number 2 to initiate a 5-year period? Is that correct?
Yeah, what? I believe so.
Okay. My understanding is that Director Murphy would just, instead of removing the 5-year term from the original agreement, is to have a new agreement that is 5 years in duration.
Yeah, and maybe it's just as simple as removing provision 2 and reinstating a 5-year term agreement. Is that clearer?
If I may, just real quick. So the purpose of the amendment.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, and I'll try and be helpful. So the purpose of the amendment was to make this in perpetuity. The current agreement has clause number 2 or item number 2 says the term of this agreement, the original agreement, shall be for a period of 5 years commencing on the date of execution of this agreement by the parties unless extended by mutual agreement of the parties. So if I understand correctly, what we're talking about is just an extension to the current agreement. No real, you could call it an amendment, but the amendment that's currently proposed is really not that important or valuable now. We just essentially would need the board to decide if they want to extend the current agreement by a term of 5 years.
So that would be the
Okay, in which case,
That's it.
okay. So so then would that be my, sorry for making this all so complicated, but I would like to put that forward and I'm not sure how to put that forward.
But I think we understand what you mean, which is to not extend this beyond 5 years.
No.
Expire 5 years.
Just not do the perpetuity is what I'm saying. So we go in for another 5 years, and we're not jumping into the in perpetuity agreement.
Okay, so it sounds like that's the motion. So then I'll call for a second. Is there a second on that motion?
I would second Director Murphy's amendment.
So you were seconding it, okay.
To Tamarron's mobile home parks agreement being 5 years in term.
Pardon me, David, if you don't, let me interrupt just 1 second. Just to clean this up a little easier.
Yeah, and
Yes, please.
How about, obviously you two are on the same page. How about if you make the motion, because you have it right in front of you, and then if Director Murphy would like, she could second it. Would that work?
That works for me. Yeah, that's fine.
Would that? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
I just thought maybe that might clean
that's
it up.
fine. Give me just 1 second to. So provision 6.
And my apologies for the difficulty in figuring out how to move forward with this.
Yeah, Director Murphy, I really want to get this right. So I don't mind the water being stirred up a little bit, but there's another part of this. We're talking about 200,000 gallon capacity fees being paid, or we're talking about the 523,000 gallons capacity fee being paid. Because if this is.
Item 1 is addressing both. So it's saying that provision 6 of the amendment of the agreement shall be revised to allow capacity previously paid for, 200,000, and any additional capacity, which is the 523, to run with the property in perpetuity.
I agree with that. So the amendment to the original amendment is to remove provision 2, set the term of the new agreement to a 5 years in duration with the capacity fees for the additional 523,000 gallons of annual use being paid. Is that correct, Director Murphy?
And that's the water that has already been used, correct?
That is actually new wording.
No, I'm sorry. The piece that you put in was that the compensation for the water already used be paid. Was that what you added in? I'm sorry, I'm a little.
Well, it would be
Can
a
you
motion.
Just restate, sorry.
Okay, so it would be a motion to remove provision 2, so that the new agreement with Tamaron Mobile Home Park would only be for an additional 5 years, with the capacity fees being paid on the additional annual water use of 523,000 gallons.
And is that what the current agreement is?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is that what the current agreement is?
The current agreement is capacity fees have been paid on 200,000 gallons per annual use and had a 5-year clause.
Okay, and so the new piece would be changing that amount?
The new agreement would actually have capacity up to 723,000 gallons per annual use.
I need to ask a
Under-
clarifying question here. Hold on here, because this is getting really spun out of orbit. The way I understand it is, the auxiliary water service that we have is renewed every 5 years. Is that right?
It's in its first 5-year cycle.
Okay. So this amendment is to not have it every 5 years, but just make it permanent.
Sorry, misspoke. The original contract had a 5-year term. It was extended by mutual agreement. And that's what this board could decide. If it wants to extend it another 5 years, of course, the Claytons, the owners, would have to consent to that. That's really already provided for. And the quantities you're listing, Director Boatwright, are not really stated specifically in the contract, in the agreement. It just says every year we'll audit their use and they will pay for whatever they use above the 200,000. Now, if they pay for an additional 523, it will be 723,000. If they exceed 723,000, they'll pay for that. And so that's all the agreement really has to say. It covers whatever use they will have. We measure it and we bill them for it.
So the counter motion is to keep it
Leave it as is.
as is. Wouldn't that be simpler to say? Okay,
No, because the provision 2 provides for the 5-year agreement to be extended into perpetuity.
So if I were up there, I might make a counter motion.
I think all I need
Something
to,
like this.
excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Jim.
I would move to extend the existing contract as is, not the new contract.
Right.
That's what I would say if I was up there.
That's what thank you.
if
And
I,
that keeps the 5 years.
if I,
That's a 5.
And that keeps the 5 years in.
if we just removed provision 2, does that take care of it?
We don't even talk.
You don't have
You don't
to.
even have
If you just move to extend the existing contract, that by way removes provision 2. Then it will only be 5 years.
Mhm.
Okay,
Not listening
perfect.
back.
Okay, so I move to extend the current contract for 5 years.
Second.
Okay, yes, Director Boatwright.
That just added more mud to the water.
Problems?
How so?
It should be understood that the current contract has another year. So at this moment in time, there is an agreement. And if the second party, Tamaron Mobile Home Park, doesn't sign whatever this board puts forth today, or postpones and follows through for a short bit of time, there's no new agreement. So it takes 2 parties to actually do this. The board has, reading through the provisional changes we're asking our general manager to make to the contract is what the board is deciding on right now. Director Murphy, if I may, seems to have an issue with just extending this to an open-ended agreement versus having, a term limit put on it. I don't have a problem with resetting this to another 5-year term. But it appears that Tamron Mobile Home Park owes an additional amount of capacity fees to be paid into our system. And, that's basically where I'm at. There's a little bit too much in this, and I realize that Director Ringen has made a motion, Director Kearns has seconded, Director Murphy and myself in a team effort have tried to amend that. Just, we need to
I think you had it.
see some way to close this.
I think you had it right, David, with what you were offering as the amendment, excluding the part about the fees. So if you were to restate what you were saying about the amendment, excluding the part about the capacity fees. So what you said was perfect. I didn't write it down, but I thought it worked. Your amendment would be to amend provision 2 of the amendment, this amendment, to remove, to extend the original agreement 5 years.
Let's try to get something down so we can vote on it.
Yeah, the problem I'm seeing with the provisions provided for the changes is to me, it doesn't seem to list out capacity fees being changed. It changes to an open-ended agreement, and it doesn't have a reset to a new level of water use. So there's
The existing contract obligates them to pay additional capacity fees when they go over the already capacity fees that they pay for. All you're gonna do now is extend it, so if they don't go over their capacity amount, they won't have to pay next year. If they go over, they'll have to pay next year. If you just extend the existing contract.
Okay.
The problem with that is I'm not seeing the clear-cut way that they're on the hook to pay the capacity fees for water already consumed.
It's their existing contract. We had 4
Okay, so
years,
that's
another year
different.
left, they're bound by it, we're gonna invoice them for it, they have to pay that. This is just to extend it. Another thing nobody
Go ahead,
mentioned,
please.
sorry.
No,
Another
go
thing
ahead.
nobody has mentioned in here is that this is the first time they've gone over. Now, it's very likely, maybe they'll go forward, but even when we have the drought and everything else, they don't go over this on a regular basis. Going forward, maybe so. But the fact of the matter is what I've heard proposed here is that we have an existing contract. It's enforceable by mutual agreement. We can extend that. We've heard the board say they don't want to extend more than 5 years. Motion to extend the contract.
I didn't say that.
Otherwise, I table it and take it off.
All right. So listen, we got some other fish to fry here,
We
folks.
got a lot of other stuff to go.
And if you can't get a motion together, I'm gonna go back to the first motion.
I've had my hand up for a while, so when you get around to it, you can call on me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Director Murphy.
So I'm making a motion to extend the contract for a 5-year contract.
Okay, so there it is. Is there a second? Okay, I'm not seeing a second.
And just to, let me let me just I'm just going to address what I heard Director Boatwright say and what I heard Eric's answer. They are paying for they would continue paying for their connection fees. They would continue paying for any amount they go over that. The amount that they are due to pay doesn't get erased by this. They're still on the hook for the water that they use. And so this doesn't change any of that. It just extends the contract that we continue doing that. We still will be planning on collecting that water from the last, collecting the money owed from the last contract as we move forward. And we would expect them to pay for what they use in the future as well. And it would this motion, all it does is change from in perpetuity to 5 years. And so all we're doing is saying, let's keep doing what we're doing, which is let them go with this capacity fee that is way lower than what they should have for that mobile home park. So stay with the capacity, let them add the capacity as they see fit. And go revisit this in 5 years and make sure it's working for them and for the district. That's what this does. In perpetuity locks us into the agreement as written in perpetuity. We don't get to revisit that. So this would be we revisit it in 5 years.
I think we understand.
For clarity.
David, do you have enough information to second this? It's going to be continuing the way it is.
Which is another 5-year contract.
I don't think that quite does it though. That there's under provision 1, the 200,000 gallon annually would change. They're going to be paying additional capacity fees, which will raise that number. And a 5-year process is then removing provision 2 of the agreement. Is that?
I think you're overthinking this, if I may, because what they already come to us if they overextend. This, the way I see it, benefits the district. Sounds like staff's really taking, okay, we're gonna clear up this headache. I don't want to go into interpretation here, but I don't think we need to add a whole lot in the motion. I think the contract is what will continue with these folks. They already have a contract. It's every 5 years. Staff has decided, look, we can recover a little bit more if we make this more permanent. We get more into the system. They're existing customers. They're not going to be out water. If new people want to hook up and then they decide they run out, this is some insurance that we run smoothly. Okay, so I think the existing contract is what Director Murphy has likes because it's got to be renewed every 5 years. I don't think we need to build in a bunch of stuff in the motion. It's just to continue the contract. But it seems like you're not comfortable, and so if there's not a motion, then it's just gonna die and we can, okay, Director.
And if we change those, that's changing the terms of the contract. We'd have to go back and renegotiate this contract, right?
No, I think the amendment is out the window. If you scroll down in your agenda package here on page 73 of 125, the original agreement was provided for reference for you after the amendment. If you look at the very first sheet there, you see down there for, see number item 2. It just says, unless extended by mutual agreement of the parties. Now, in a perfect world, we would be having this conversation next year when it was expiring, but we're having it a little earlier. But the reason we're having it earlier is because if I'm the owner of a mobile home park, I don't want to pay TUD $40,000 knowing that next year he might just cancel the whole contract. Absolutely. So it's business here. He's come to us and asked us, hey, I want an extension of the term. Otherwise, I'm not paying you your $40,000. And that's why we said, well, let's do it in perpetuity. I understand we don't want to do that. So let's just extend the current contract by 5 years. And then in 5 years' time, we can have this conversation again and revisit and see if it's of mutual benefit to both parties.
And where I'm at is basically extending the current contract, resetting the water levels for capacities that are changed, capacity fees that have been paid, run with the property for that small portion. They've obviously got a ways to go, and over the next 5 years, they exceed the new set limit of their capacities. Then as the new agreement is brought in, new capacity fees are due and resets to a new level until hopefully eventually.
That's all addressed in the agreement,
Yeah.
in the existing agreement. That's all addressed.
So did you hear that? David, that it's all addressed?
It spells out the procedure by which if they exceed, and then there's a new limit associated every year after they make payment, and that's all addressed in the existing agreement.
So do you have enough
Yes,
to second?
yes, I would second that.
Okay, great. All right. Any further discussion on this amendment? Now we're gonna vote on it. Okay.
Voting on the amendment.
The amendment.
To the original.
Mhm. Okay. For the roll, Melissa. Call for the vote.
Okay. Director Regan,
No,
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
No.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Balin.
No.
Okay, motion fails.
So now we go back to Director Ringen's motion, which is to authorize the general manager to execute the amendment for auxiliary water service to Tamron Estate, Home Park, LIC, Tamron Farms. All right, Melissa, would you please call for the vote?
Director Ringen,
yes,
Director Murphy,
No.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
No.
Director Balin.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 3-2.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, I'd like to take a 10-minute recess.
Stretching.
Everyone, give some space.
Thank you, everyone.
So I'm going to sign off so I can charge my phone, and I will sign back on in 10 minutes. Does that seem correct?
That sounds good.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
come
great.
back in 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
For 2 minutes, I think. Is she on?
It's unmuted, let me check her.
Oh, we were on mute at the time that you asked. Director Murphy, are you back with us?
No, not yet. We're at our 10 minutes right now.
Right now. Okay. Okay, so we will reconvene. And Melissa, will you please read the next item?
Okay, item number 8, consider approving variance agreement for water service to non-adjacent parcel due temple.
Okay, good morning, afternoon, I don't know, but Antonio Ramirez, TUD Engineering Department, Customer Service. The item I have here today for you is a variance agreement for water service to a non-adjacent parcel in the community of Sonora. This is at north end of town, kind of off of Shaw's Flat Road area, a road called Kiwi Drive. I was approached by Mr. D. Temple, who owns a property that has a shared well with 3 or 4 other property owners. Their well does have issues with water supply periodically, mostly towards the end of the year. And so he's came to me seeking his options for water service. He's requesting to extend a 2-inch water service lateral to his property with his meter being at his property line. We would be responsible for this 330-foot service lateral. It would end up probably having free services put on it for the potential of a couple other property owners potentially connecting to it. Those property owners, initially I steered Mr. Du Temple towards a water main extension in this case. That would be typical. However, after looking at it in the field and he discussing with his neighbors, the district didn't think it was really necessary and didn't desire a mainline extension, and they didn't desire one either. That's why we decided to come to you with a 2-inch service lateral. So the variance is a little bit different than in the past in that it's not, the meter is adjacent. It's just that they're getting the variance from the requirement to extend public main and do the 2-inch lateral instead. So I'm trying to be brief. Go ahead and take questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
So this went before a committee and we took a look at it and we saw the reasoning. It sounds like the other 2 people want to stay on the well. I'm all for bringing people in onto our system to get them off of groundwater such that we have it. So that's why the committee seemed to think this was a reasonable request. Have summed it up, Jeff? Okay, all right. So any other questions from the board? Yes, Director Bowe.
Who would be constructing the line?
The property owner would be.
Okay, and that's all the way through his contractor through our facility, or we?
His contractor under our inspection.
Is it a tank site or?
It is the former Gopher tank site. It used to be the Gopher tank site.
Okay, so
The tank is no longer there. It's a pressure reducing station that's there instead.
And into the future, after construction, we would maintain, operate this?
Correct.
Will we have an inspector as the line is being made through here?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David.
I didn't include in the staff report the letter from the intervening property owner. I received that yesterday stating they're aware of the project and will grant a public utilities for us should we be pursuing this project.
Thank you. Director Murphy, any comments or questions? Oh, I thought
Sorry, I was stuck in the waiting room, so I just got admitted to the meeting right now. And it was a little, I could hear there were comments going on, but I couldn't hear what they were.
Okay, is there something you have a question on?
Just where are we at on things, because I was stuck in the waiting room.
Well, really briefly, this is a small variance. There's one person, a couple that wants to get off of a well that currently has 3 people on it. that would mean the
Oh,
remaining.
I'm sorry. I read what is in the agenda. I missed any discussion before now.
Okay, I don't think there was very much, David had a clarifying question, and that was regarding who pays for this, and the owners will pay, and then we'll take it over. What else? That was about it.
Okay, I think that was my only question I wasn't clear on if extending the water main was a cost that was coming to the district or the cost that was getting taken on by the party before it got turned over to us.
Okay. Any member of the public have any comments? I don't see it. Okay, thank you. All right, well then I'll bring it back for a motion. Director Ringen.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the variance request and authorize the general manager to execute the agreement for water service to non-adjacent parcel due temple.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I would second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Melissa, please call for the vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Director Murphy.
Yeah, and just to be clear, right, that what I stated a minute ago is correct, that the Dew Temples are just requesting a variance. They're covering the cost of the new lateral
Correct.
that's being extended. Okay,
Yes.
and then that will get turned over to the water district and be maintained and operated by the water district.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, Melissa.
Okay, Director Ringen,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director.
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Boatright.
Aye.
Director Balin.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Okay,
And
yes.
Antonio, before you take off, I was on the water committee, as you know, before the current two board directors, and when all the variances started coming in, and I just want to compliment you on the amount. I went to both committee meetings last week, and I want to compliment you on how you have changed the amount of information and what's provided. It makes these decisions really easy to make because it's clear that the reasoning is makes sense. So, anyway, thanks for your work.
Well, I already decided I'm gonna add who pays for these things.
And who's going to inspect it?
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
Antonio.
Antonio.
And before we move into our next item, I just wanted to say that at noon, we will get a board consensus of whether we continue or we recess until later. So I know this has been long, but our board handbook says 3 hours. We gotta renegotiate if we want to continue. So with that, we will go to the next item.
Okay, item number 9, discuss and consider approval of fiscal year 2023 capital improvement plan.
All right, well, I'll take as much time as the board wants, but just to kick off, will be fairly brief. You have the staff report. In essence, what we're asking for the board is their approval of a capital improvement plan with emphasis on next fiscal year. We historically endeavor to spend, or budget, I should say, $2 million for wastewater or sewer improvements and $5 million for water improvements. These are capital improvements that qualify, that are $50,000 or more, excluding vehicles. We go through this process annually, updating our 5-year CIP with a lot of collaboration with operations. Superintendents propose projects that they're aware of are needed in the field. Then we meet with them and refine the work scope. What exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve? And then engineering takes on the role of developing, Yadiel Dimete behind me, developing budgetary cost estimates. Those then get kind of put into the process with more iterations of meetings until we arrive at the list that you're looking at in your agenda package for consideration. Many different factors go into play, including not only the finances, but also phasing. Can TUD build it, or should a contractor build it? Can TUD design it, or should a consultant design it? Is this something that is required for a regulatory reason? Is it a developer agreement in which there's a cost share so that we have to do the project then? Is this for some other reason a risk of a critical failure of infrastructure, so we really need to do it in the next year? All of those things get factored in, and we could discuss those in great detail, but we just want the board to be aware that this list comes with a lot of background work that's taken place. So happy to go into any detail. It was heard by the finance committee, and at that time there was some discussion about the level of detail that you see. So your agenda package has the complete list. We also had a special board meeting where we give you the overview of the total costs associated in a PowerPoint presentation. So this isn't the first time you've seen this information. However, the complete list of projects is there for a deeper dive if you so choose.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, I appreciated the getting that list before it went to committee. Okay, so board, any comments on it? This is just the CIP, right? Okay.
Jeff, would you like to review what we did in the finance committee?
Well, I think the gist of it was that we discussed bringing to the full board the option of having a deeper dive, more information, more detailed information for the full board to vote on. That's pretty much the gist of it. Do you agree with that, David?
Yeah, and that was part of it. Also came out as far as details available, where to find them. I did some research. I wasn't able to find anything as far as our project sheets for our current capital budget on our website. It was not, I found 22. What I dove into the details on this, for like 22, multiple items on there. Didn't say whether they were done or not. A complete rebuild on the Washington Street sewer. There's a $2 million budget for last year. Are we moving forward with that? Scope has changed, just as one particular item.
So the Rich, I believe, is also online, wastewater collection superintendent. So he could respond to Rich if you care to, but no, the gist of it is we've rescoped that upon further evaluation, and you'll see it listed in your wastewater capital schedule as Washington Street sewer lining, and it's listed out as for fiscal year 27. So some of the work that we previously thought upon further evaluation could be pushed a little farther out, and as we know, budgets are tight, so we decided to put that at fiscal year 27, and the amount is different as well.
Okay. One of the details I brought up, some of the finance committee, and I wanted to bring it up again now. That item, why would the rescoping or priority of Washington Street, just as one detail look, not be a item going after funding this year versus putting it off until I think it was actually 25, 26 maybe, as far as in the capital schedule?
Is your question, why was the project rescoped and the timeframe changed?
Well, we had a $2 million project that the board approved to go into the CIP budget for funding last year.
It wasn't 2 million all in 1 year.
I'm pretty sure that's what the website,
No.
it was a total.
No, our entire wastewater fund CIP is usually about 2 million annually, with the exception of our current regional wastewater treatment plant, which is its own huge project. But no, that project, I don't have this last year's CIP in front of me, but it wasn't 2 million in one single year. It was maybe 2 million in collection system improvements over a specific time frame, multiple year time frame. Washington Street is one of those where once we got eyes on it and did our proper assessment and reevaluated priorities, which we're constantly doing, it came out that this is one that could wait. And financially, it was to our value, to our benefit to push this off. And so what you're seeing is now fiscal year 27. We're pushing it out to essentially the end of our 5-year term. And instead of a dig and replace, which I think the old cost estimates assumed we needed to do, which involved a lot of pavement restoration and a lot of traffic control and probably night work to minimize impact to business, doing a lining project seemed more viable, and especially because capacity wasn't an issue. So we've rescoped it and changed the timeframe on that basis.
Okay. So bringing it back to the board side, and my personal thought on the capital improvement schedule is I would really like to know what's got to be done this year. What are our priorities? Does the tank need to be replaced? A booster system or station need to be replaced? A wastewater lift station need to be replaced? This is what we need to concentrate on. And with so much variability in what I'm looking at and approving as a board member, I'm told that, hey, as long as we stay within budget, we can, change this and reset its priority. What happens to the funding that was, that the board approved, allocated towards that project? Does that just go back into reserve funds?
Well, first of all, David, I'm not sure when you say what happens to the funding, and this came up in the committee meeting as well, but, we have a budget for the water fund and budget for the sewer fund.
Mm-hmm.
As of today, these are the priorities that your staff has come up with as need to be done. Something changes tomorrow. Mainline break, lift station goes, opportunity to connect 50 homes in Stent with funding, Curtis Creek School needs our help, whatever, so it's changing. So the idea historically has been the board is not approving individual projects. Yes on Washington Street, no on Stent, yes on this. The board is adopting this total of $5 million for water. Then as we go through it, from a budget standpoint, as long as we're within that 5 million, we're within our budget. Now, all of a sudden, if we have a capital budget project that's going to take us over that amount, we would come back to the board and ask for a budget amendment for additional funds. But if we're within that, then it's up to operations, up to us deciding how to keep our customers in water doing what they're doing if we want to delay Washington Street and move up Curtis Creek, or we do this or that. So when you talk about what happens to the funding, again, if you look at our capital projects, if we spend all that funding, there's nothing left over. We may have put it into a different project, but we stayed within our originally adopted thing. So that's the distinction I'm hearing from you. I'm hearing you want to go to individual projects versus historically the board's approving a total CIP And then staff will keep you informed as we progress and go through which projects are where. So it's not like we didn't do this project, so we had $2 million left over. We spent the $2 million on a different project, it became more priority because the tank fell down.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from that is myself as a board member, I'm approving the $5 million for water with no clear-cut, decisive plan of option or plan of action.
I don't know what that means, because here is.
Okay, let me explain it again. Then, what I as a board member am approving in the water funds is $5 million of capital improvements that, as long as staff does not go over $5 million, the board and the public do not have a list of, this is what we're doing with the $5 million this year.
Here is the list, and you get CIP
Okay,
updates
but
throughout
what
the
you told
year.
me before that is historically, the board is approving a $5 million in water funds. And if priorities change or different things shift, that as long as staff stays within the $5 million of the water fund, it doesn't come back to the board. And at the end of the year, we may see projects carried back and forth.
We typically have a CIP report on a regular basis, whether it's every month or every 3 months, different boards, different general managers have asked it be differently.
Okay,
So this is our plan right now. And 3 months from now, if we needed to make budget transfers between projects, that would be provided to you as well. These are the projects we will set up, we will begin. If another project comes along that's going to take place this, we'll add it to the schedule and show that as a transfer within the projects.
Without board approval.
As long as it's within the total. And again, historically, the board is not approving an individual project. This is a list of projects, you're approving all of those. But what I'm hearing from you, you want to be able to say yay or nay if we have a failure in Curtis Creek. So we should come to you and change that before we find monies from within the CIP. That's a big change. If the board wants to go that direction, we need to discuss that and flesh that out further. But
I as a board member, I'm not looking to, I may have questions on different individual projects, but I'm not looking to give you the projects. Basically, at the beginning, as I'm approving a budget, I would like a list of, items that this is what we're going to get done this year. If something comes up and comes back, I certainly think the board should, and maybe that's my problem as a board member not paying strict enough attention, but to get it in a report in past tense, if it's already done, you're not asking my opinion, you're telling me what happened. Or, asking the board for guidance, you're telling the board what happened.
Yeah, so let me just make sure I understand, because I started doing some research on budgets and I noticed that other boards do build in this kind of flexibility. And one thing, for an example, okay, let's say I'm looking at this TUD main office asphalt seal coat, okay, 144,000. There it is in our budget, okay. But let's say San Diego ditch has that big sinkhole opened up. Okay, that wasn't planned, but let's say that comes to 144,000. Okay, so I'm thinking that staff gets together and goes, where should this come out? What's a low priority? We got a big emergency here, we're losing water. Let's take, this money is within our budget, matches the need, and without having to come to us, they can respond to an emergency. The seal coat gets rolled over, and so then when we look at the CIP report, we notice that did not get done, but this got done instead, so that they are accountable to us for what did get done with that money, which we control. That's the way I see it. Is it, and are you saying you would want them to ask permission to take that seal coat money and put it over here in San Diego?
See how that. I'm not quite sure, because, I'm not asking to tie staff's hands. I'm just asking for more of a concrete, list of, this is what we have to get done this year. And if this is what we have to get done this year, if San Diego ditch comes up with a sinkhole, there's an additional, whatever that we have to take care of this year as well too. And if staff recommends, dropping a certain project to, replace the funding over there, that is more of a recommendation to the board rather than, wiping out. I don't feel that there's enough governance involvement with what I'm hearing is the board is approving a number in the financial budget. And as long as that is not exceeded, there's no guarantee that we're doing any of this stuff.
Don't we have in our report at the board meeting, the accomplishments so that we can actually compare? Maybe that may be something that might be helpful is to, at the end of the year, yes, I'm almost done chaptering, then I'll, okay. So that rather than we look at each meeting, we have the CIP, what they finally accomplished, and some things are multiple year, whatever. And we could have that end of the year list. I know Hadlin had the red light, green light, so the board could see at a glance the what got stalled and what's going ahead. Would something like that be helpful? I don't think we do that anymore, but maybe we should reinstate that.
Well, and that's where, CIP tying back into the strategic plan and how that all correlates back together. But, staff is coming to us right now with CIP. This is how we're going to spend $5 million in water fund and $2 million in wastewater fund. But there's no guarantee that any of these things will. To me, it almost seems like there's no accountability for dropping something else off and plugging something else in, as long as it's within the number.
No, there isn't, Director Cook, right? There isn't.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Ron.
That's good.
They're giving us this list. They're saying, in a perfect world, that's what's gonna happen. But we know it's not a perfect world. We know we're gonna have these water main leaks, and we're gonna have ditch failures, and whatever else that comes up. And I want staff to be able to have that leeway, to be able to make those decisions so they don't have to call on us. I don't wanna get calls at 2 o'clock in the morning on an emergency board meeting to change the CIP. I want them to do their job, what they're getting paid for, and run the system. And as long as they're staying in their CIP budget, I want them to make that emergency call and get things fixed the way that they should. And I think you made the comment, you don't want to tie their hands. You're absolutely right, I don't either. And I think if we try to dial this down too tight, that's exactly what we'll be doing. And that's a concern. But as I stated in the Finance Committee, if they are getting outside of the norm, and I agree with you, if they do, then they need to be reined back in. And then it's up to us to get on Dawn and then Dawn to get on staff. But I have personally, this board member has full confidence in our leadership team, our staff to make these calls when it comes to CIP and to make those changes as needed when those emergencies arise.
Excuse me, before you answer, we gotta share. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was.
No, he was done. I just wanted to move it back to you.
So I sat through as a stone through that arduous, painful finance committee meeting the other day. So I came up with some comments, some questions and I'll get through them as fast as I can, but I think this is what the board needs to be thinking about, what I have down here. First of all, what sort of information more is needed and how detailed? Who on the TUD Board of Directors has the time to review and evaluate that much detailed information? And for what reason? How can a TUD Board Director know more about a CIP project should encompass and or need even a former employee than the current employees and staff? I mean, it's starting to sound like staff and the employees are not trusted to be able to get the jobs done. I've been through this process at least a couple of times in the 9 years now that I've been on this board. And well, I'll show this to you in a minute. Anyway, could the TUD Board of Directors do with such detailed project information? Is there an expectation of having the ability to change or alter certain projects? That's called micromanaging. Check out your TUD Director's Guide Manual. It's all in there. Which, by the way, Melissa McMullen worked real hard to put together, and this comes from mostly CSBA information. Besides, many times TUD staff and employees don't and can't determine exactly what will be the project details and components until it is underway. When you were the wastewater supervisor, would you have wanted the TUD board to tell you what needed to be done on a project for a wastewater department? I think not. Besides, we could have a food fight with 5 uninformed but insistent differing opinions from the TUD Board of Directors. Excessive waste of time and money to have staff put all the detailed information together of what the CIP project is. For what? What can we, TUD needs in timely, what we, TUD needs is timely decisions on the monetary items to allow employees to order parts ahead of planned projects. Doing the above will save money and have things ready to go and on hand when the project is able to be scheduled to go. Does TUD not have a CIP plan that is followed closely as dollars allow? This list of 33 projects from the last CIP in 2015, and they are huge projects, and they're all stuff that was handed to TUD when the county formed TUD. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment. And there's things got changed around year after year, but they got done. So just as a quick end to this, the Board of Directors' responsibilities is the mission and vision of where TUD is to go for the betterment of the ratepayers and community. To make sure TUD stays on budget and financially viable and operable. Check this out. It's all in there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Ringen. Any further, yes, Director Boatright, and then I'll want to make sure Director Murphy has her hands raised if she's called. Go ahead, please. Dave.
Me or Director?
No, you.
Director Ringen, thank you. Exactly on point. Totally agree with everything you said. But as an example of what I am seeing occurring by not having a set list of priority projects in the upcoming year, that without some oversight or interaction with this board or random changes, the Willow Springs sewer pump station. Last year's CIP budget, 194,000, I believe. Go by memory, sometimes numbers are good or not. For a major maintenance upgrade or a major maintenance in the form of recoating the existing sumps and possibly purchasing a new pump has changed into this year's budget, a little bit higher, with a following budget of $420,000 for next year to actually, instead of doing maintenance on our existing infrastructure to upkeep and maintain, we're going to look for property and totally build a brand new Willow Springs wastewater treatment plant at a cost of, when added together, $600,000. I can't think of, certainly know that the wastewater committee didn't recommend it as far as Willow Springs sewers pump station. Going out to staff to go look for other property and other options and come forward, with a place to rebuild it. I'm not asking to get the weeds. I'm asking for a list of say what we're gonna do and do what we say. Instead of having a wide open, this came up. It's an emergency. Totally understand. Broken water main. Most broken water mains don't require, extensive replacement on overnight issue. A broken water main may lead you to realize, hey, we got a bigger systemic problem on this water main that we need to either fix right now, get into budget, change the budget around. But that night during that mainline break, backhoe operator is going to dig a certain, lineal feet and may replace a full stick of pipe, something like that. A ditch, certainly a sinkhole on San Diego, that would be, pretty good. But right there in that moment, before engineering is coming up with the, fix for the idea, ditch operator is just going to shut the ditch off and stop the water flow. Engineering is going to come back. It may come back to the board, but where I'm at as a board of director is I want to see the list. I don't want a whole lot of things. I don't care what the project is. I mean, certainly I've got some other questions. That's 16-inch control valve, moving it in the reclamation system. Is it getting moved closer to the reservoir? Is that the proposal?
It is the proposal.
How come we didn't do it 15 years ago when we last looked at it?
I can't answer that question.
Okay, what's the benefit for moving it?
If we want to get into all those details, we
No,
can.
I'm just,
But I mean,
some of the project sheets are supposedly available. I haven't seen them, so that you can keep the details. But, if I look back next year and it's not done, must not have been a priority. Why did it come up on, asking me if we can budget money for it?
I'm looking for a specific question. If you want a specific question, I'll be happy to answer it. I haven't heard a specific question for me.
Okay. How many of these items will change before now and the end of the year?
Several. We've admitted that. It's been demonstrated, countless times. Director Boatwright, I don't know how to explain this to you, but I don't know that the counties can come to us with another Stetton Forest project that's going to cost $2.5 million to construct and 6 months to design. If they come to us with such a project, we're going to have to not put in the 16-inch control valve and do that. That's just what happens. You know this. This is not new to you. You've had the benefit of being here for 32 years. You know how the best laid plans go a different direction. What the beauty here is we don't wring our hands and woe is me. We roll up our sleeves and get to work and meet the challenge. We met every challenge that's been thrown our way, especially the last 7 or 8 years. Remarkable to me.
I have to be a timekeeper, I don't mean to interrupt, David, this is an interesting discussion, but we have reached our 3-hour limit, so it is time to either continue or take a recess. So I'll put it out to the board as a consensus about who would like to continue with our meeting until it's over with. Okay, I see Director Kearns, Director Ringen, Director Murphy. Would you like to continue?
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. I'm fine to continue.
Okay.
But not indefinitely.
I'm fine to continue. David, how about you?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got that part done. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but what I'm hearing from you is a level of accountability that you would like. Because you've worked here and you understand that the board is, has that responsibility. And maybe this is helpful, okay? This is a question for you, Dawn. In my career, I sat down with my supervisor and she said, what do you want to get done this year? I had a commitment. It was in my performance appraisal. At the end, I had a 6-month review. How are those 6 things that you said you were going to get done, Balin? And I said, well, something else came up. I couldn't do this. And I had to do an accounting of if it wasn't what I had signed that I was going to produce that year on behalf of the American people. And it seems like, and if something else came, well, we had a fire, right? And that, and there goes everything. But then they knew where I was and spending my time in the fight. So I'm wondering, do we do this on a personnel level where each employee does commit, they have a 6-month review, and at the end, at the year-end performance review, they talk about what they got accomplished. And if it didn't, why not, and what got, what did they do? And when I first got here with Gary Yeager, I don't think there was any performance evals at all. So is that getting a little closer, or is that not?
I think it went a little bit lower in elevation or a little closer to the weeds than where I'm anticipating. To me, the CIP list is coming from, basically the general manager, Mr. Perkins, sorry. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
It's fine.
This is business and the way, it's looking. But this CIP list that I have in front of me that has numbers in year 23, this is what I'm looking at. I'm expecting these things to be done. And if they're not done, why weren't they done? And if it's time, something else took priority, well, that item that, was a priority in 23, it doesn't jump out to the end. It should jump over to, hey, I'm your priority for 24, and I'm actually higher on the list of get me done than I wasn't.
So do we have a 6-month review for this list? Like where are we here in 6 months? Do we have something like that?
We can have, we can, yes. If we don't have it, we can get it. We can do it on a monthly basis or.
We did one in February.
We did CIP status report in February.
Okay.
That's what it's on 6 months.
Okay, good to know. And sorry, Director Murphy's hand is up, and then we'll call on you, Ron. Okay.
Right.
All right. Go ahead, Director Murphy.
Thank you. Thank you. And mine is kind of a broad question. Just so I completely understand the overall budget. And so I just, it's kind of a step back from what we've been talking about the specifics. With the CIP, right? The CIP is our capital improvement projects. It's the things that are what we need to do to keep the existing system running, and it includes the upgrades and the replacing of things. But it's also just kind of the maintaining of the infrastructure. I have a follow-up on that, but is that correct?
No, operations is maintenance, correct? Or this is just improvements?
It's improvements, it could be new facilities, new equipment, new tractors, modifications to facilities, replacing 3,000 feet of leaky water pipes, things of that nature.
Yeah, I'm just, so here it says, whereas the CIP provides a schedule of expenditures over 5 years planning horizon for constructing, maintaining, upgrading, and or replacing public water and wastewater infrastructure with emphasis on the fiscal year of 2022-2023 for budgeting purposes, and then it goes on. So that's just where I was getting the wording that I used was from the resolution that's written in the agenda notes. My question on things is we have all of these. I just needed us to understand in order to understand what I'm improving in the capital improvement plan, and so it's a broad question, but it is for me attached to the agenda item that we're working on, and so hopefully it's a quick answer. So I'm looking at this. I'm seeing replacement of trucks. I'm seeing replacement of the tech pipe that we've talked about a lot. I'm seeing rehabilitation of a well. I'm seeing I'm not sure what it is, but stuff about maintaining the ditch or improving the ditch. I'm not sure what I'm not sure what the siphons do and ditch slope stability, and I'm assuming is an erosion issue and stuff like that. So I get that. So we have, just from the budgeting side of things, we have the CIP, which is I believe roughly a quarter to a third of the budget. I believe we have the operations budget, which includes all the payroll and retirees and stuff. And then, but what I don't understand is where the projects fit in. Because I know that we're approving things on project by project, like with the Sierra Pines and with the wastewater treatment plant and the at least getting the property for the Sonora treatment plant. But just a real quick, just very quick minute explanation of where those things fit in the budget, please. And if I have my understanding correct.
So this is Steve, Lisa. I'll try to take a 10. I'm not really sure what your question is, because I thought I heard two different ones in there. First and foremost, this agenda item, these are the CIP projects that are not grant funded, that are in excess of 50,000, that your staff believes are of the highest priority and would like to propose getting done next year. The special board meeting we had before, where I presented both this, Eric presented this, and I presented the O&M. When I say O&M, the district's total budget is, like you said, here's our revenue, here's our labor, here's our O&M, and here's those CIP projects we have that are not grant funded to come up to that total balanced budget or net deficit. Specifically things like Sierra Pines or regional or whatever, if there's a matching portion, that's going to be on this schedule because we need the cash. If we're saying we're going to hold off until we get grant funding, then they wouldn't show up here, because unless we have the grant funding in hand, we don't do it. So does that answer your question about where they are in this?
Yeah, that's very helpful. And then also, I'm looking at the word inflated, and I'm knowing that we have, supply chain and supply cost, increases in lag time and increases in costs and stuff. When I'm looking at inflated field year 23 budget, and I'm looking at these numbers, is that the difference between what we looked at before and what we're looking at now, or is that the overall cost now including?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. That's really an engineer doing his schedule and putting that title on the heading. not something I typically would do, but basically what engineering did is to go through each one of these line items to calculate the estimated cost as of right now, what we know. Can our staff do it? Can somebody else do it? Cost to pipe and all that. And then include an inflation factor, which I think is 3%, which I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if it's not enough, but we're getting, as Barbara said, we're getting noticed on a daily basis of Ron said, excuse me, Barbara, we're getting noticed of inflation. So that inflated title just means that Gadiel and engineering has included a factor based on today's cost, and that's what we're proposing for each of those fiscal year budgets.
Okay, and then I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the flexibility element. So if let's say one of these projects with supply chain issues, we're not able to get the pieces and the parts for it, or we determine that something else is more important. Staff has the flexibility within the CIP to choose one of these things. I'm just going to go with, like, let's say a couple of the trucks. We're like, okay, the trucks can last a little bit longer. Right now, it's hard to get a Chevy 3/4 ton truck, and it could get replaced right now. It's on the schedule to get replaced, but we can get it to go another year. Then that frees up that money to be allotted to the project that went a little bit over what we had expected in the CIP, right? So there's flexibility within the things on here to these are all the prioritized items, but there's flexibility built in within this, that if a project goes a little bit over, you can look at some of these and maybe deprioritize some of them as needing to be done in fiscal year 23, right?
Yeah. I think you're right on, Lisa, as far as that. I don't know if I'd use the word flexibility. It's been a long understanding that from a practical nature, it almost on a daily basis, we find out, oh, well, this project's going to go over because of this cost. Or I love the sinkhole example. Those guys are out in the sinkhole that night and the next day, and 50,000 doesn't take much. So all of a sudden we have a project over 50,000. But from a practical nature, we only have these board meetings every 2 weeks. So if we have to come in every 2 weeks and ask you to change the budget or change that holds up a lot of things. So the understanding has been for decades, and it's typical with most agencies. Some agencies have different budgetary laws. But for us, if the board approves, this is our budget going into it, this is the total amount. If we're able to stay within that, Eric Hall comes to me and says, hey, this is going to be over. First thing my accountant and myself say is, where are you going to take that out of? Because we're not going over the budget unless we have to. And if we have to, we're going to go back to the board on that. So that's how we go from project to project. Now I'm hearing somebody say, well, this project we adopted today, it's burned in stone. We have to do that no matter what. Well, that's just not practical, and that's not how things can possibly operate on a day-to-day basis. And I want to clarify too, for people who are listening, I don't like the term that we have no accountability. I take offense to that. We have more accountability than any other agency I know of. This adopted one, when we leave here, we have project accounting software. Every one of these line items will be assigned a project code and tracked from every bit of time that goes into it, every material surcharge there or whatever. And we report that to management for their use on a monthly basis, as well as the superintendent. The board, you can get as often as you want. David, call me up, come down. I can provide that to you on instant, whatever. Other board members, if you want to see something different, I've always said, tell me what you want and I'll present. But we have full accountability for these CIP projects. And this is our best estimate as to where we stand right now. Sorry, Lisa, I know I went off a little bit there. But yes, you're right. We stay within our budget. We're going to do that. And we track it on the schedule we present to the board. It's going to show originally adopted, line by line, every single one of these detailed projects, any transfers, any grant funding, total labor costs, total material costs, and where we're at and how much we have remaining. And that's typically part of the mid-year budget review, and it'll also be part of the annual year-end review. as well as the auditors audited. So back to you, Lisa.
Okay. Yeah, so I have another question. So let's say, and this just dealing with supply chain stuff, right? Let's say, you know, and I'm going to give the Techite pipeline a project just because I know it's a physical thing that I understand what we're doing. So like on the Techite pipe, let's say that we haven't purchased that pipe yet and that we try to, and we find that what we want is not available right now, and it's going to be 7 months before we're going to be able to get that. Does that money that's been set aside for that in this year's budget get rolled over into next year's because now we've taken that item from this year to next year? Or does that money become available for not for operations, but for capital improvement projects that weren't on the list to come onto the list to do? Like, how does that work? Do you, if you know that the project, we're still doing the project, it just got pushed for a year, what happens to the funds that were allocated to that project?
And I understand the question. I kind of cringe anytime I say somebody say rollover. And hopefully I tried to address that during our special board meeting, but from a practical matter, because we don't have the luxury of a bunch of reserves that we can just pull out of there when we find out we have this additional project, we have to come up with this cash flow on a year-by-year basis. So we do not just roll it over if a project gets done. Those funds, typically, if we know we're not going to do it till next year, we will try and utilize them the best we can. Sometimes we go ahead and order it early just because if we can get it, we can get it. But each year we bring this back to you. Engineering and all the superintendents have to go through all the current projects. And if it's not going to be done by June 30th, which is typically the case a lot of times, then they're going to have to rebudget some portion of it for the next year. And so that's where you're going to see a same project in last year as well as this year, but a different dollar amount.
Correct. But does that, do the actual dollars in the GIP budget from fiscal year 23, does that actual money get put into 2024? We've allocated it for fiscal, or it just gets used in fiscal 2023 and then we find it in the budget?
Yeah, we don't roll it over. If we didn't use it in 23, I can't think of any year where we had excess funds, but if we did have excess funds, we're trying to build reserves, we're trying to pay down some negative equity in certain things and doing that. But it just, to answer your question, it does not roll over. It would stay within that year and be closed within that year. We view each budget as standalone for each fiscal year.
Okay, so I guess that then that goes to the question. So when we're looking at the grand total of $5.2 million as the CIP budget for field year 2023, fiscal year, sorry, different entities. Fiscal year 2023, we expect that for water projects that 5.2 million will be spent, and we expect that 1.8 million will be spent on sewer. And these are the prioritized projects. If for some reason, one of those we are not able to do this year, something else will take its place, and we'll either spend that money on that project or it will go into the reserves.
Correct.
Okay, and then next year, that thing, like there's no reason to use Techite pipe project other than I feel I have an understanding of it. So if that got shifted into the following year, then on that CIP, you would be prioritizing, knowing that needs to be done. We've got the materials for it now or whatever. And you would be reprioritizing the fiscal year 24 to incorporate that line item, that project.
Sounds correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. And again, I think staff is wide awake on this one. I think the point's been made that, do what you do, which is to come to us mid-year and say, here's what's getting done and here's where we had. I know Eric, you say, didn't get any bids on this. We had to reconfigure it. We're coming back to the board. And I just feel that if we pass this budget now, that we'll be getting reports along the way about the level of service that we've come to expect and the accountability for how this money's getting spent. I don't know how else to say it, except that I think that the board can also, we can put more information on the website on each project. There's always room to improve on transparency. But I'm comfortable with this list. And yes, go ahead, Director.
No, I don't want to interrupt you.
Well, I'm just gonna say, I at this point, I'm comfortable with this list.
Okay, so I just want to remind everyone that the CIP does not come from GM Perkins. He may present it at the board meeting, but it does not necessarily come from him, period. There's about 15 people out there that are all involved in coming up with that CIP list. And it's done over a period of time. And that's how the CIP gets put together, which Mr. Perkins may be the person that actually brings it before the board, but he didn't necessarily make it up. He looked over what the staff and the others were doing and okayed it in the very end to be presented to the board for our okay. The other thing that I want to bring up is that the CIP projects are completely different than the major projects like Sierra Pines, regional wastewater, and so on. This is what we're going to do with the allocated monies for this next year or two, and that's it. It's so simple. It doesn't have to be this difficult. I don't understand. It's been working great for years. Really good.
Any other director wish to comment?
Director Murphy has a hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Director Murphy.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that this item isn't presented by the GM. This item is actually presented by Eric Johnson, District Engineer. So it's a staff, it's a staff agenda item, just to clarify that.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, well then let's bring it back to the board for a vote. Yes. May I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the capital improvement plan and funding for the fiscal year 2023.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any, yes, Director Boatright.
I'd like to amend the motion.
Okay. A motion to, if you'd like to make a motion to amend. Because you're gonna need a second, okay.
I would like to make a motion to amend motion that there is a more open report to the board for items on the CIP budget that are interchanged to other items. Projects not being done because funding is being spent on new unpublished projects. This reporting can come in the form of a consent calendar to the board or from the general manager through his reports, but needs to be specifically pointed out.
So let me just clarify your motion. you would like a more open discussion. And that doesn't mean coming to the board for approval. That just means incorporating it in your reports to the board. Okay, that's what you're asking, more feedback about the CIP. Okay, all right. So that's the motion, and that's attached to approving this budget with, but you would like to amend, never mind, I'm gonna just talk in circles. I think we've got your
Motion to amend the motion.
to be a little more open and transparent. I wrote down your words, open discussion, in the course of how these things are unspooling and how we're spending the money. Okay, all right, is there a second on that?
Hand up from Director Murphy.
Okay, Director Murphy, is that a second?
I just want to make sure I understand because it's breaking up a little on this end. And I'm poised to do a second, but I want to make sure that I know what I'm seconding. And so I think what I'm seconding is that when changes are made to the CIP, the staff will report that to the board. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, as items are changed on the CIP to, we're not going to seal coat the main yard. Instead, we're going to replace roof panels on the building instead. I report back to the board as far as, we'd like to know about it. It would just be an example.
Yeah, but it's a report back. It's not a approval needed, correct?
I'm sorry.
Right, it was just more, it's not an approval. In other words, they don't come back to the board to approve every little change thing. It's just more embedded in the regular discussion.
Okay, yes, so I will second that motion. And I think a clear way to say it is just if changes are made to the CIP, the staff will report that to the board at the next, opportunity.
Thank you. Now we have some more discussion here, and that's, so there's a motion and a second to amend this. And Director Ringen, you have?
I've got a question for staff, probably Steve Sheffield. Is that not already being done?
I'm not sure what open means, but it's a suggestion. Historically, what I'm hearing is you'd like a report. We do this report every month. If you'd like me to bring it to report, how about I bring it to the board as an informational item, look at it. If that's what you want, that's what we'll give you. On a daily basis, we're having to look at where these things are. But every month, every one of these projects will be listed. Every transfer will be listed. Everything will be there, and we can have this discussion. We're asking y'all to adopt the budget first and foremost. If you want a report, I'll give you. I've been through dozens of board members, numerous general managers, whatever you'd like, we can provide. We are generating that right now. It's available to you today, David, if you want to get it or whatever. So anyway, I don't know what open means, but just as a suggestion, next board meeting, I'll bring you a report on the CIP if you like. Fair enough, Don? Fair enough.
Okay. So now we've got this motion to amend, so let's call for the vote for that one. Okay.
Okay, Director Ringen,
No.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Director Kearns,
Based on what Steve just told me, no.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Balin,
I think we do it, and I think we got everybody's attention, so I'm gonna vote no.
okay, motion fails.
Okay.
So back to the original motion, Director Ringen, seconded by Director Kearns, and that was to approve the fiscal year 2023 capital improvement plan.
Okay. Any further discussion on that before we go call for we've got a motion and a second, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so Melissa, will you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Ringen,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
I'm sorry, what are we voting on?
Approving the fiscal year 2023 capital improvement plan.
Yes.
Okay. Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
No,
Director Bailey.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-1.
Thank you, Melissa. All right, so now we're gonna move on to item 10, discuss and consider approval of the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 operating budget.
Good evening, good afternoon, board members. I'm used to going last, and usually in the old days, everybody would leave right about now. So I'm gonna give it to you the same way I gave this same board last year, a year ago on here. We had a budget workshop on May 26th and reviewed the O&M budget. There have been no changes to it since that time. What you have in your board packet is the detailed official overall budget report. It does include that total CIP you just approved. Tuolumne Utilities District is a public governmental agency. The draft budget organizes the functions of the district in a typical public sector format and includes detailed schedules that display various components of the district's budget and financial data to provide in-depth information and transparency about how the district expends its funds. Revenue and expenditure schedules are followed by descriptions that define the revenue or expenditure type. A budget recap schedule displays the entire district budget at a glance, and individual departmental operating budgets break down expenditure categories to functional areas and include a personnel summary defining the departments and divisions within which the various personnel of the district are assigned. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Steve. Just to be clear, I have a question. So what we're now voting on is the operations and maintenance.
It's really the total budget for the district's water and sewer funds. And it includes that total CIP we just did as well.
So can you show me where it says
Share
that
screen.
it includes the CIP?
I'm gonna have Eric share screen.
Other than in the resolution? I know it says it in the resolution.
There should be a page titled recap or summary.
I see is it the expense summary?
Recap, it's in here. Page 22.
Okay, thank you.
The next one, page 23. So again, this is Schedule 7, the budget recap. I apologize on yours, it kind of nixed out the water and sewer fund. I've corrected that for the final version. But the first column is the water fund, the second one is the sewer fund. The inflows are the revenues, and this is the same that was presented to the board on May 26th. It shows, revenues of 17.2 million and 7.4. Below that's the outflows broken down into labor, services, and supplies. The debt service for the total outflows, the net before capital is approximately $3 million for water, $1 million for sewer. The capital improvements you just approved, the 5.2, the 1.8 leaves us with a deficit or net negative outlay of $2 million for water and 700,000 for sewer.
Thank you. I'm not gonna not vote for this, but it seems to me it would just be a little clearer next time to have your operations, administration. I'm not telling you how to do your job, except that the O&M is there plus the CIP, so that that we're putting them together. Is that? I mean, I see inflow and outflow, and I don't want to be picky, but I just
Yeah, this is part of it, not an explanation, whatever the board wants, we
Yeah.
can do this, but this is consistent with what's been presented by the district for the past 12 years.
So, yeah, what I'll do,
So,
yeah.
you know, again, in this summary, and it spells out in the earlier programs, and it spells out in each individual department what these categories are and where it is. But, you know, that's really how we're netting those together, so.
Yeah, and again, we have enough information, it's just to me how my mind works in terms of how it's packaged.
I think, you know, in the earlier special workshop, I had the pie charts, and we had pie charts. So I had that, and those were combined totals, but certainly for next year, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions from the board on this? Okay, none? Okay, Director Murphy? Any questions? I'm hearing.
Would you like them to stop sharing? Sorry.
No, I don't see.
Okay, I'll take that as a no, all right, and any Cindy, public?
No.
Okay, then I'll bring it back. Is there a motion?
Let me get back here. Sorry.
I just thought the finance chairman should be the one to do this one.
I'll make a motion for resolution number, do I need a number?
1322.
I make a motion for resolution 1322 approving the fiscal year 23 operating budget.
I'll second that.
And it's been seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, Melissa, please call for the vote.
Okay, Director Ringen,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
She's still on?
Yeah.
we'll come back.
Okay,
Okay.
good,
Okay.
thank you.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
No.
Director Balin.
Aye.
Okay, we're waiting on.
Wait.
The mute unmute is malfunctioning again. But she votes yes. You want her to call?
Yes, please.
Hello.
Hi, Lisa, sorry, we're gonna need to hear your verbal vote.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-1.
Thank you. All right, and then in the interest of time, we have left staff reports and director's communication reports. And I would like a motion, or I would like to make a motion to table those until next time. We can just hold off on those unless somebody has a really burning report they want to give.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Melissa, you want to call for that, a vote?
Okay, sorry, I was writing this down.
Okay.
Okay, Director Regan,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
I'm trying to understand what you said.
we are tabling staff reports and director's communication due to time.
For next meeting.
Do we have, one question I have on that staff report on what we're seeing as far as, water? I know, I don't know when it's on this call.
Have we had Innisfil yet?
No. Still going.
Do you expect, do you have?
Next few days.
The next few days before Innisfil?
Okay, that's good report, here, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we're still good with our motion. So Director Murphy, do you vote to table the staff reports, director's communications until the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Director Kearns,
Yes.
Director Boatright,
This is for table and everything?
just tabling staff reports and directors' communication reports until the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay,
Aye.
thank you. Director Balin,
Aye,
okay, and it passes 5-0 to table those two items.
thank you. Then this concludes our meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the recommendation.
You're welcome.
Bye.